Good evening, I'm Bill Bailey, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome everybody to the July 13, 2016 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. We're happy to have you here, all of you who are here in person. Thank you for coming out on a hot night. We also appreciate everybody who's watching us, whether you're streaming us live on your computer, on our Town of Brighton YouTube channel, and if you're not following that YouTube channel, we encourage you to do so. Or if you're watching it on Channel 12, our cable access channel. We appreciate everybody who participates in their government, whether on-site or remotely. I will note that there are agendas for tonight's meeting in the front lobby of the room, where a copy of the meeting packet with all of our proposed resolutions and all the backup material to those items that is out there. If you're watching online or on your TV set, watching cable channel 12, all of the same materials are available at the town website, townofbrighton.org. So however you choose to participate tonight, you can follow along with the same agenda. We'll start the meeting with a pledge to the flag. I'm going to ask Councilman Chris Warner to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This has been a tough week, this past week. I think all of us, in one way or another, have been touched by the violence in Louisiana, the violence in Minnesota, the violence against police officers in Dallas. We need to come together. It is past time. We need to all give heartfelt thought to what is important, and that is the equality of all people. You may have seen the op-ed piece I wrote. If you liked it, thank you. If you didn't, I'm always happy to chat with you about it. But I think these are important issues in our time, and we really do need to focus on why the incidents happened in Louisiana, in Minnesota, and that someone would shoot at police officers. And I give our Brighton Police Department absolutely the highest kudos. The work you do, Bob, Chief Henderson couldn't be here tonight. He is out of town on police business. But the work you do, top to bottom. Ours is a police department that has been among the first to institute body cameras with an effective body camera program. Ours has been a department that has worked with, formally and informally, with all elements of our community, different faith backgrounds, different racial backgrounds. That is important. And we will continue to do that because what we're doing today, collectively all of us are doing today, is obviously not enough. So what I'd like to do is ask for a moment of silence, please.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could just address, just for a couple minutes. As the supervisor said, these are unprecedented times. I've been on the job for 34 years, and I've never seen anything like it in my time. And, you know, even the officers in Brighton, we struggle with our emotions every day when we hear of things that are going on. But the one thing that kind of lifted our spirits over this last week in particular was the outpouring of support that we did receive from residents of this town. We received a lot of well wishes. We received some treats downstairs. Some food was brought in and left for the officers. And you know, we're starting to have that transition in our department. Some of us older folks are starting to retire and move on, and we just recently hired 2 new officers. And they have a long way to go in this career. And you kind of look at the look on their faces, and you know, they're struggling, and have this approach that, you know, does everybody really dislike us that much? And, but the feedback and the response we've gotten from the citizens of this town has been extraordinary. And on behalf of the men and women of the Brighton Police Department, I just want to thank all of the residents that are here and all the residents at home watching for your well wishes and the treats that you brought in. It means a lot. It means a lot to us. So we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very well said. As you know, we start our town board meetings with our open forum. Our open forum is an opportunity for members of the audience to address the town board about any matter, whether or not it's on our agenda tonight. Now, I will say that if you're here for the one public hearing we have tonight, which is the public hearing, the continuation of the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement and the incentive zoning application, both with respect to the proposed Whole Foods Plaza, and you would like your comments to be included in the record, please hold your comments until we start that public hearing, which we will very shortly. But if you would like to speak on any other topic during the open forum, please raise your hand. I'll call on you. If you would come to the podium, speak into the microphone so our listening audience can hear you. I just learned that my microphone wasn't working for a moment, but it is now, so hopefully everybody's picking this up. Please direct any comments that you have to the board and not to other members of the audience. Please be courteous, as you always are, and please try to keep your comments as concise as possible. As always, if you have written comments that you would like to submit and have included as communications for this meeting, you can give those to our town clerk. If you are watching at home or streaming live on YouTube, you can also participate in the open forum by calling 303-3060. 303-3060. Someone will take your call and relay your question and your comment up to us. As always, we'll try to answer the question if we can. If not, we'll try to get back to you with an answer. If you are deaf and would like to participate in our open forum, you may call our TDD line at 784-5205. 784-5205 for our TDD line for our deaf community to participate in the open forum. We always look forward to hearing from you with questions or comments concerning your local government. Is there anyone that would like to address the board during our open forum tonight? And again, if you're here for the public hearing, please hold your comments. We'll be there in just a minute. Hearing none, okay, we will move on with our meeting. Can I have a motion to approve our agenda tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. And let me just mention, Council Member Novros could not be here tonight. She had something happened to her today and could not be here tonight. So she sends her apologies. Can I have a motion to approve and file the town board meeting minutes for the June 8th, 2016 town board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just want to note, Supervisor, that this is on, you've already seen this on the agenda. This was after the fact. You notice there was an error. You may remember the
Thank you.
front loader versus tractor resolution discussion. The agenda still reflected the front loader as opposed to the tractor. So this just corrects that.
Thanks for that
mistake.
reminder, Dan. Yeah, that's right. We will be approving the June 22nd
Minutes
minutes
at the next meeting.
at the next meeting. Yeah. So we have a motion and a second to approve and file those revised minutes. Please call the roll, Dan.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. We'll now move to public hearings, and as you will recall, we commenced a public hearing on the proposed Whole Foods Plaza at our last public hearing, and I appreciate all of you that were here that night and who participated either by speaking or by listening. And we, at that time, continued the public hearing on. I would note that it is a public hearing both under SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, concerning the draft environmental impact statement, as well as a public hearing under state law and our town code concerning the incentive zoning application itself for the plaza. We received a number of communications at that time, and I do want to note that the period for written communications remains open through at least Monday, July 25th at 5 o'clock p.m. I gave you a somewhat more lengthy description of the public hearing at the last meeting. I think most of you were here at that time. At that public hearing, we did have several groups, the developer, as well as attorneys representing other groups, who asked to make presentations early on in the public hearing, and they were each given an opportunity, 15, 20 minutes or so, to do so. I will, again, one of those attorneys is not here tonight. I don't know if anyone is here on his behalf, but I will ask each of the, starting with the developer, whether you wish to make any preliminary comments this evening, either through Mr. Goldman or any of yourselves. I can't see Jerry there behind the podium, but
Anthony is going to be speaking.
Anthony, thank you. Let me just, I want to make sure I've declared the public hearing to be, again, open. Now go ahead, Dean.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor, town board members, and staff of the town of Brighton for allowing us the opportunity to address the board on this exciting project for Brighton. I will be brief this evening, as I believe we are at a point in this process where it is the public's time to be heard, and we look forward to the comments and the opportunity to address those comments as is appropriate in a final environmental impact statement. This town staff and board deemed this DEIS complete. Not perfect, but complete. And yes, the New York State DOT did question a specific conclusion relative to queuing in the April 4th review letter from New York State DOT regarding their review of our traffic study. Our traffic engineer did revise the DEIS prior to its submission later that month to address this discrepancy. And I bring that up because there were several comments made a few weeks ago relative to that. We are prepared to address comments on traffic and other items at the appropriate time in the FEIS as part of this SEQR process and after the public hearing is closed, as is normal protocol. My family and I have been the subject of false information and accused of being selfish and untrustworthy. I hope that this board, who we have been in front of several times, appreciates the openness, the community outreach, and the positive track record that we have as local business people and developers who have spent most of our lives working, creating, and serving in the town of Brighton. This is a special project that redevelops an existing commercial site with a great anchor tenant in Whole Foods and offers the community significant amenities in the form of improved public trail, consolidation, cross-access, and shared parking for a significant portion of this corridor. And ultimately, the opportunity to make this section of Monroe Avenue safer and better. Not to mention the millions of tax dollars and revenues that pay for schools, roads, and recreational amenities that this town enjoys. We have reached out to the community, engaged with neighborhood groups, and made adjustments to our proposed plan based on their desires and concerns. Now they continue to ask for more, which is their right, but above and beyond what they specifically stated were their concerns right here at this podium not so many months ago. As for the slick mail pieces, expensive websites, calls to people's homes during evening hours, all at the hands of an anonymous organization represented, frankly, by a hotshot lawyer from Buffalo who knows nothing about this community. This lawyer has a reputation for representing ambiguous clients under the false notion that he represents the community. He does not represent this community. There are deep pockets behind this organization. I would guess that his client is embarrassed or unethical, or that there is a significant conflict of interest that prohibits them from being forthright. All that being said, we appreciate the work that this board, and especially the town staff, has done so far. We are confident that this board will judge this project based on fact and not emotions, rumors, or opinions. And I ask that we close this public hearing on seeker tonight and allow us to move forward and address these comments in an FEIS. This is a great project for Brighton. Let's not let this opportunity slip through our fingers. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Mr. Bergdorf, do you wish to? Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. Robert Bergdorf, appearing on behalf of the Clover Ellens Creek Neighborhood Association. The association submitted a letter to the town board setting forth its position at this stage, so hopefully it was received by the town board and there was an opportunity to review. My comments are quite limited tonight because the public input is at a standstill until the correct traffic information is supplied by the developer and the public can review it. Indeed, many of the association members were told there's no point in coming out again tonight until we have that information. So there's really 2 points I'd like to address tonight, and neither of which are going to be a surprise to this board. The first is traffic, as it relates to seeker, and the second is the method of review. Traffic. With respect to traffic, I'm going to raise both substantive and procedural concern. With respect to substance, DOT did report in its April 4 letter that the traffic information, the basic traffic information supplied by SRF was flawed. It needs to be redone. McFarland Johnson, which is a highly respected traffic engineering firm, has also stated that the developer's traffic report is inaccurate, SRF missed crucial information, and it is otherwise fatally deficient by any reasonable industry standard. It is simply unreliable in its current form. This board will have McFarland Johnson's full traffic report by the end of the month, detailing exactly what is missing, exactly what is deficient, so the town's traffic engineers, Stantec, can review and double check and see whether or not it believes McFarland Johnson's right. We welcome Stantec's review of McFarland Johnson's information. We urge the board to review that report. We urge them to have it fully vetted by Stantec, its own independent traffic engineers, before there's any decision to close this public hearing. Similarly, we understand, although we don't know because we have not yet seen the report, Stantec has not finished its report, but based on the one letter, it appeared that they had some serious reservations about SRF's traffic report. Again, it's not out yet, but the public would like to review that and have the opportunity to comment on it at a public hearing here for their elected officials, not just through written comment. With all the core issues of this case coming back to traffic, it would seem that this would be unfathomable to the public if the town closed the public hearing before requiring all this information and giving the public a chance to review it and to comment in front of the board. And that's all we're asking for, is that you listen to McFarland Johnson, you listen to Stantec. If you believe those are reasonable requests, require the developer to supply it and give us a reasonable opportunity to review and come back and comment before you close the public hearing. We believe that's a matter of fundamental fairness, and we ask the board to wait until it gets those comments before it closes the public hearing. That is the right thing to do substantively. As for procedure, it's also the right thing to do, we submit, from the standpoint of legal procedure. We will be submitting, before the end of next week, a legal brief outlining the fatal legal deficiencies that we believe exist with having deemed this DEIS complete and having accepted it, in our view, prematurely. While it is true that Seeker says the DEIS does not have to be, quote, perfect, we believe, and after having researched it and vetted it carefully, we believe that based on these facts, That cannot be a rationale to save the deficiencies with this DIS. But that brief is going to go a step further. It's not just going to point out the adverse legal predicament that this process is now in, because the DIS has been deemed complete and accepted, but it's going to offer solutions to correct it, which is basically the procedures through the SEIS and to get the right traffic information. Because the developer may not believe this, but the association wants to move this along. We want that plaza to be redeveloped, but we want it without the rear access points being open. So we are offering solutions as part of that to get it on the correct track. So let's do it right. Let's do it right the first time. And there's nothing we can do to even challenge that until the process is over. So we go down this route. We have to wait till this process is over, then challenge it. It could be another year, and we predict, if nothing changes, we'd be back in this same position a year from now. So why do that? Let's do it right the first time. We encourage you to review our legal brief, get a second opinion, get an independent legal opinion, and require the correct information. Keep the hearing open. Otherwise, this will be unnecessarily dragged out. Let's do it right the first time. With respect to my second point, the method of review, in our opinion, while recognizing the dearth of good case law on incentive zoning, we believe this project, as proposed, is inappropriate for treatment under incentive zoning. Which is not to say there aren't good cases for incentive zoning, which is not to say this town has not done some good things with incentive zoning, but not every case is ripe for it. Incentive zoning is not a bus. It does not have to stop for every developer on every corner. This application does not consist of minor variations to the existing zoning protections. Rather, it requests a project that's grossly in excess of what's permitted as of right, both in square footage and in terms of density of use. Its primary tenant is not even permitted as of right in this district under the code. It would require a use variance, one of the most difficult standards under conventional zoning. It would not only abut a residential neighborhood, but would actually encroach into a residential neighborhood and destroy the wooded buffer. It would blacktop 91% of the surface instead of 60% as required by code. It permits a drive-through that's not otherwise allowed. And I understand there's disagreement on the percentages. Our interpretation, the project's at least 150%. Others may disagree. We believe that the grocery store, even if it were permitted as a right, would be 250%. I understand that there's controversy over that. But it would otherwise require 22 approvals and variances. So unless the developer submits a significantly different project, this project we submit should be sent through the regular zoning process to be dealt with under the conventional zoning protections. And that's a lot of what is the problem with this case, and I think why we're at this point today. And let's be clear, because a lot of people don't understand this. The town board has complete authority to do this without further delay. It has no obligation whatsoever to entertain an incentive zoning application. It is entirely discretionary. Therefore, we're also asking the town board to send this project, unless there's going to be some major changes, to send this project the way it's proposed through the conventional zoning process to be reviewed under conventional zoning limits and with the imposition of traditional zoning protections and standards. That's where this project, as proposed by this developer, properly belongs. And since this is also noted to be a hearing on incentive zoning, I just want to touch on that quickly. Before we even get into the notion that this is, as we've said in previous meetings, it does harm first, and that needs to be corrected. But even if we got past that, then there's a notion of amenities, and there's a complete lack of amenities here. This developer has not been told to go through conventional zoning, even though what he's proposed is such a departure that doesn't have a single legitimate incentive zoning amenity. These are all conditions. A traffic light is not an amenity. It is a condition. Fixing problems that this project will create by enhancing cross easements across the road is not an amenity, let alone that the developer has yet to have a concrete plan of how he's going to do that across the street. Nor is paying one's taxes or avoiding tax breaks an amenity. All these problems go away under conventional zoning. I also want to note very briefly, because I just heard Mr. Daniele say the neighbors are greedy and they've been asking for more. I stood up here and said we're looking for two things. One is proper landscaping. We had to fight for that, but I think that issue is now water under the bridge. But then the association is also asking that the rear access points be closed. And we have not been able to get any kind of legal assurance that they'll be closed. So we're still up here for that reason. We have not changed our position. That's a position we've had right from the beginning. So lastly, and I just want to mention this briefly because this is getting a little out of control. I think somebody mentioned robocalls and all kinds of crazy things. And I know at the last meeting, this has nothing to do with the Daniellis standing in the community. I'm sure they're wonderful people. It has nothing to do with how wonderful developers are. I'm sure they can build a good building. It has to do with traffic. It has nothing to do with Whole Foods, and I tell people in the association that just as much. I had people calling me to say, you know, Whole Foods stock is down. I don't care. I don't care if they don't get their beans from organic. I don't care. This is not about Whole Foods, except to the extent that a grocery store is a highly intense use, and so it changes the matrix. Last September, we were here, and we put up a matrix as a preliminary look at different ways you could do this, including an alternative that allowed the full-sized Whole Foods, but other things had to give, drive-through. And so it's not about Whole Foods, nor is it about the attorneys. I'm not going to speak for Dan Spitzer, and actually, I appreciate he's getting picked on, not me, on social media. And I've never done fracking, by the way. I have done wind farms. Point is, it's all beside the point. None of that matters. This is not about the Daniellis. This is not about the attorneys. This is not about Whole Foods. This is about a proper project, which comes down to traffic and density of use. So I urge all of us, let's put the circus aside and let's focus on what's important. Number one, let's get proper, honest, accurate traffic information and have it properly vetted. Number two, and let the public comment on that. Number two, then let's get this project right-sized with the right use density, and I can't tell you what that is because we don't have the traffic information. Whatever that is, let's get it right-sized with the right use density, and then let's get this plaza redeveloped. Let's get this back on track. Let's stay away from the extraneous issues. Let's get good traffic data. Let's properly size this project. Let's get it built, but let's do it right.
Bob, can you just stay up there for a second? One, again, I want to ask everybody, I really do, we've heard the word circus, we've heard the word out of control. I want to thank all of you, at least certainly those of you that were here last time and those of you that are here tonight, because we had over 200 people here last time. Many, many of you spoke, and it was anything but out of control, and I appreciate that. That's a reflection on this community. I did ask last time that we not have expressions of outburst, including applause. I even told a lawyer joke. It worked last time. I don't want to have to tell a lawyer joke again this time. So please give everybody that same respect that you hope that they will ask you, and please refrain from, outbursts, positive or negative, during the rest of the hearing. Just a quick question to or comment. You had mentioned that you anticipated the McFarland traffic study before the end of the month. You are aware that as we speak tonight, that the end of the written comment period, the end of the time in which any written comments, including comments from council, will be included in the record of at least the seeker public hearing, as we stand here today, is 5 p.m. on Monday, July 25th.
That is the crux of the problem. If I
just want to make, I
appreciate it, but if I didn't state it clearly, I'm talking about the secret public hearing being held open, not the incentive. Okay.
I just want to make sure, because you had said before the end of the month.
That's as soon.
I want it to be very clear that as we stand today, and we held about a 4-hour public hearing 3 weeks ago, and I'm very pleased that many of you are here again tonight, and we will continue to have that good, thoughtful, reasoned comment making, but that the seeker requires 10 days after the public hearing closed. We have indicated already that if, and I can't say one way or the other, if the public hearing is closed tonight, the written comment period will end for the seeker public hearing on July 25th at 5 p.m.
We understand that. And our point to the board, we would be extremely disappointed if the board closed the secret public hearing, and we also believe that it would make the secret process fatally deficient. That's our position.
I understand. I just want to see if any representatives of Save Monroe Avenue are here tonight, whether council or members of that organization that would like to speak on behalf of that organization. Hearing none, Jerry, if you want to very quickly comment, because I do want to hear the public.
Yeah, and I will also add that I am a member of the public as well, being a resident of 59 Branchwood Lane in the town of Brighton, and for a substantial period of time. I do appreciate your comments. I also do appreciate the civility of the public as well as the comments as they are presented by Mr. Bergdorf. But I would like to talk a little bit about what he had talked about, and I'll make it quick. Mr. Bergdorf started his comments by talking about the traffic information being flawed and made reference to the state DOT letter. As Anthony pointed out, state DOT letter was written on April 4th. The traffic report, which was part of the DEIS, is dated April 20, was submitted to the town. This board accepted the the DEIS as complete on May 22nd, and now we're hearing, gee, we need more time to be able to respond to it. The fact of the matter is that we're now from May 22nd to July 13th, and we would think that if there were to be comments that were forthcoming to be considered by the public from McFarland Johnson or anyone else, that those would have come out. Otherwise, we are doing nothing more than prolonging this process. We do look forward to the comments of McFarland Johnson, hopefully timely, as well as the comments from Stantec, as well as the comments from state DOT. The public will have an opportunity to review that traffic. They'll be able to review it in documentary form. They will be also able to, as the supervisor pointed out, comment going forward as part of the public hearing on the incentive zoning itself, which will continue to be open. The seeker public hearing closure allows for the next step to proceed in this process and allows the board, the town, the public, and everyone else to consider all the information that has been received from the public and to provide that information. Also look forward to Mr. Bergdorf's legal brief, which also could have come within this time period as well. I guess I'll take a moment to defend the incentive zoning process, if you will, because seemingly no one else is. And that is that it's a process that the town has used effectively with regard to developments of any magnitude over the course of the years, some of which have been represented by attorneys who are speaking here this evening. We're talking about, Bob made reference to 22 variances. I count 19 area variances, however many it may be, if it's 19, 22, whatever it may be. The DEIS does indicate that there are 150 bulk requirements that we are addressing relative to this. So we aren't talking about wholesale relief from the code. We aren't talking about hijacking, as has been put by other council relative to this. Whole Foods is a specially permitted use within the district, as are most uses in the BF2. There are very few permitted uses that are there. With regard to amenities, Anthony spoke to that briefly. That will be continued, and discussion will be continued throughout the process. But we urge that the seeker public hearing be declared closed so that we do have an opportunity to compile all the comments in finality so that we have them all and then receive the responses, and then the town can proceed with their process and the applicant can proceed to try to provide whatever information is appropriate under the seeker regulations. With that, we thank you and look forward to hearing the rest of the public comment.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anyone that would like to? Yes, sir. And again, I just want to clarify, is there anyone here, council or representatives of the Save Monroe Avenue group? Okay, come on up. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Elder from 94 Shoreham Drive. Last meeting I talked fairly general terms about the whole food developments, and then later on, I realized there were some specific comments that I wanted to make because I drive through that area on a regular basis. First comment was that section 2.2.4 of the DEIS states that a traffic control is to be added to Monroe Avenue. It doesn't mention anything about the type of traffic light, whether it's synchronized, whether it adapts to traffic flow. I mean, it may be that all traffic lights on Monroe Ave are already synchronized, and if that is the case, the new light should also be synchronized with the same system. I didn't read in the DES anything about the type of traffic light that would be put in place, and I might have missed that. But I would propose that any new traffic light should be incorporated as a smart traffic light system, so that there's the maximum synchronization capability and the best possible traffic flow through the area. All right, on to the next point. For northbound traffic on Clover, turning westbound on Allens Creek, there needs to be a left turn arrow added to the traffic light on Allens Creek and the Clover intersection. I'll be handing this in so you don't have to take notes. The lane markings need to be changed for westbound traffic on Allens Creek where it intersects with Monroe Avenue. Currently, there's one lane for left turns and through traffic and another lane for right turning traffic. These lanes should be changed so that the left lane is left turn only and the right lane is for through and turning traffic. This is because the increase in eastbound traffic on Westfall blocks the westbound left turns, and so you end up with a problem getting through that intersection. Eastbound traffic on Westfall turning south onto Monroe Ave totally gridlocks. I don't have a solution for that, but a traffic engineer needs to look at that. I'd also like to request that we review how a student should safely walk from Monroe and Clover intersection to the 12 Corners area, because there's missing crosswalks in that path. There's no 100% safe way to do that. I think we should consider adding a crosswalk to Allens Creek where the Auburn Trail crosses it, because if that's going to be a cyclist, pedestrian pathway, then a crosswalk makes sense for safety reasons. I'd also like to suggest that Brighton resurfaces the Auburn Trail from Allens Creek to Highland Avenue as part of, it's not necessarily part of Whole Foods, but it would be a good contribution to the cycle trail system. It would be good if folks from the Councilhood neighbourhood could leisurely cycle to breakfast at the Whole Foods Plaza, and a cycle trail with a good surface on it would promote families being able to do that in the weekend if they chose. Thank you for your time, that's all.
Thank you very much. We did have a couple of earlier speakers. If you had written comments that you did not give to the clerk, I would welcome your doing that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Robert Zapsochny. I live on 730 East Brook Lane. Again, to highlight your comments earlier about the police, I want to just say thank you for all that you do. And I'm basically here in support of Whole Foods. I think that they're a great store, and I think that whether it's bigger or smaller, I hope that this process will be concluded as quickly as possible, because I do think that our community has a very large element of people who, when we bought the Gunzenhauser property 16 years ago, that was to convert a park from undeveloped land. This is to develop commercial property. And I do think that if these people are bullied, or if this is seen as an example of being harangued long enough, this could really hurt it will make other businesses less likely to be welcome. I think that Whole Foods would make great competition with Wegmans and Trader Joe's, and I think that they're a great store, and I hope that when this is over, other businesses who want to move in here will not be treated by some of our citizens in the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Davidson. I am appearing as president of the State Homeowners Association, which is Woodbury Place off of Allens Creek Road, just beyond Allendale, Columbia. We consist of 59 individual homeowners in there. Most of you probably have never been back in there. But coming out of there onto Allens Creek Road is sometimes a very scary operation. Allens Creek Road is a 2-lane town road with no shoulders. Between Clover and East Avenue, it is strictly 2-lane other than the turn lanes at Clover. Now, I was a member of the Brighton Zoning Board back in the 1980s and 1990s. And I don't think there have been too many changes made to the zoning law since that time. I'm an attorney, well aware of what the zoning code provides. This should have gone through the normal procedures and the zoning board. I do not understand what the incentives that have been presented can possibly do to take it away from the jurisdiction of the zoning board. Now, there is no guarantee that I know about that would prevent the applicant from seeking an ingress-egress on Allens Creek Road or Clover Street in future years. Certainly, Allens Creek Road cannot handle any kind of additional burden of traffic. A few of my homeowners have indicated what's going to be the route for the tractor trailers. Are they coming down Allens Creek Road, or are they going to clog up Monroe Avenue more than it already is, or Clover Street? This is a highly residential neighborhood. And I am asking this board to take into consideration a residential neighborhood being inundated by a tremendous additional amount of traffic, where we now have enough problems trying to come out of Woodbury Place, and I cannot imagine what additional problems this is going to create. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Yes, sir. And then, is that Mr. Gillette back there? Yes, it is.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and town board members and captain and rest of the Brighton staff. My name is Roman Lesov. I live at 130 Edgeview Lane in Rowlands Tracks. I live about 0.6 miles from the site of the development, the proposed development. I just want to first state that I admire the Daniellis as business people and as really, I think, examples of perseverance and what you can do to grow a business from scratch. Having said that, I am opposed to the project as stated. I did submit a letter at the June 22nd meeting, so I won't go into all the details there, but my concerns mostly are from traffic and safety. I think a project the right size and appropriate for the level of traffic that's already there I think would be welcomed by most people, myself included. I do hope that they proceed with the development, that it's very successful. But I feel that a high density project, as stated, the size that's stated on that piece of property would really impact not just the traffic in the immediate vicinity. As I mentioned, I live in Rowlands Tracks. We already see the effect of traffic down the Monroe Avenue corridor in our neighborhood at times of high traffic volume. People cut through our neighborhood. It's a neighborhood with a lot of children. And I think that would just increase dramatically if there was an increase of traffic in and out of that development. I've lived there for 14 years, and I've seen the traffic increase over that time. My two requests are that, one, that the proposed project be, go through the general zoning process as it exists now. That incentive zoning, I think, is something that is appropriate in certain times, but I think that the amenities as proposed are inadequate. But the other request is that to make sure that we have enough information as far as the traffic impact, because as somebody pointed out at the June 22nd meeting, I think there's no turning back. If you build it too big, then there's not much you can do at that point. The other thing I wanted to point out too is, I don't know how many people have been on the website and gone to the Envision site, Envision Brighton site, and it really states our vision for the future. And I think this is really well put. And I do like the statement that says economic policy statement. The presence of small businesses, technology industries, medical services, and educational institutions help to shape Brighton's diverse and vibrant local economy. Nowhere does that say a large national retailer. So I do think that following the guidelines that are there, I think would provide us with good guidance. And I hope that Supervisor and Town Board, that you review all the data that's necessary before making any decisions. Thank you.
Tom?
My name's Tom Gillette. I live at 105 Pickwick Drive. Thank you for hearing me even again. I'll be submitting paper copies or electronic copies of not just tonight's comments, but other comments that I've made or we've sent, but they don't appear in the record that's on the Brighton Town website. So either that's not a complete listing, or maybe we offered them at the wrong part of the public hearing. I don't know, but there are a couple letters going back to April of 2015 when we started this adventure.
Right, and those would not have,
Well,
predating the hearing, so
it is
please
our
feel free
intention to submit those for inclusion. I agree with very much of what some of our neighbors have said tonight and Mr. Bergdorf, so even though it's tempting, I'll spare you repeating those things. A couple of the points, though, that I'd like to make, I don't believe have come up yet, and I want to make sure that they are stated publicly in addition to being in written form. The DEIS refers to, in a few different places, private agreements relative to properties that are abutting the area of this proposed development. It seems to me, it seems to us that those would be good to know about and for the community to know about, kind of like now, rather than at some point in the future, somebody saying, well, there was an agreement with the Baptist church to do this, this, and this. I think they all bear on this project, and since they're mentioned in the DEIS, I would hope that if it's not public information, at least the town is able to review those agreements that are mentioned. We've had some conversation about Whole Foods, and it's wonderful and terrible all rolled up in one. They're a great brand. Would be wonderful to have them somewhere in this metropolitan area. I think as part of the consideration, the town needs to look at what really is going to go into, if a Whole Foods goes into that parcel, whether it's 53,900 square feet or 35,000, when one looks at the Whole Foods information that's available,
there's a reason that Whole Foods is successful. It ain't just a grocery store. In fact, even the drawings that were submitted indicate that one of the entrances, I know they're just drawings, they aren't real yet, but could be for a tap room. Many of the Whole Foods operations include one or more restaurants as part of the store. We don't know what's going to go in there. Some of the Whole Foods operations offer trainings and classes for people in the community, which on the one hand, wow, that's great. On the other hand, if it adds to the traffic and takes up more parking spaces, I'm not sure it's great, but we don't really know what is planned for that store, and there are 16 or 18 other possible tenants to that complex when it's developed as proposed. So I think we need more information. To continue on the theme of more information, I'd love to see all the traffic reports and have the hearings stay open until we have all that data before making a decision. I found it very actually, my wife Kim located what turned out to us to be a very disconcerting presentation of data in the DEIS. We like data. I love charts. I love to see those lines going in the right direction. I am a person who is convinced by data. One of the things that is, bless you, that's included in the report in table 2.211-1 is something that is labeled, it's on page 6970 in a very short section, attempting to establish, I believe, what the impact would be in terms of the traffic and the business in the store. It looks like this. I think it's on 69, maybe 70 of DEIS. Anyway, it's labeled an operational volume summary. Well, we tried to find out what that meant, and most of the time when you Google something, you get 80 zillion hits. We only found about 6, and one of them was in this report.
Tom, can you just repeat the number?
2.2. Table 2.211-1.
2.2, because it's
table
not on that page. I don't believe 2.2-11.
I can send that around if you, that's what it looks like.
I've got it on page 100.
Page 100. That may be from the prior
Could be.
edition, but thank you. Page
Hard to keep up with it.
Yes. Operational volume.
That's the one?
Yep, thank you.
Well, we located precisely the same data on a website from the National Real Estate Investor Association, from a study done by the Simmons Marketing Research Bureau, and it was published on the website anyway in July of 2003. And that table, with exactly the same times, exactly the same percentages for all those times, weekdays and weekends, is labeled percent of Americans who are out shopping during indicated times of the day, which is interesting, but it's not about Whole Foods. It's not about Brighton. It's not about this parcel. So here I am, the big fan of data, hoping that this tells me something, and it does tell me something, but it's not data relative to this particular project. It's kind of like, 3 out of 4 of us would rather be home watching MasterChef right now. So, okay, good. Maybe this is...
Sorry, Tom, could you clarify again what you meant? You're saying this is the exact same data is in a different chart for just American shopping generally?
Yes, it's their the web page I taught English for a lot of years, and what I used to call this when students did it was, you know what I used to call it, I won't say. But it's to me, it's disconcerting because it seems like it's an attempt to use some data to make the case, but it's not data that has anything to do with what we're looking at here, or if it has something to do with it, it is barely connected. I don't know what other, because we haven't been able to make it through all 300 or 287 pages of the DEIS, but it makes me curious about what other data is dubious. That's why I think it's all the more important to get the traffic data as best as we can before the hearing is closed. The one other thing that I would mention, again, that we found this in the DEIS, and it raised a flag for us, is that there's a report about the woodlots that are east of the parcels between, like, where Clover Lanes is and Clover Street. And makes me concerned that even if we shut off the access points that go to Allen's Creek and behind Mama San's onto Clover, because these woodlots are not subject to any requirements that the town has, because they haven't been designated as town woodlots, 3 years, 4 years from now, somebody could say the traffic is so bad, let's go right through that woodlot over to Clover Street. And I hope that's not going to happen, but that might be even worse than what we're looking at now. I think I would just reinforce what a couple of the different speakers have said, which is I don't think that this incentive zoning is in the town's interest, and if this project proposal goes through the traditional zoning process and it comes out however it comes out, I'm very comfortable with my elected representatives and the boards that deal with the zoning issues working through that and applying what needs to be applied, and that's what I suggest that we do. Thank you.
Tom, just a couple things real quickly. I know you had indicated you are going to be submitting additional information. You referenced this chart from another publication. If that's something you would like this board to consider, I would encourage you to.
It is in the package that we are doing the last edit on. But the website, the page from that website, and I will certainly provide the website itself. Well, I'll give you the advanced copy right now, just to. This won't count as the real submission, but that's, you can see it's exactly.
We'll include that, but we'll also include your addition.
It's exactly the same. It's like the same chart with a different name, but all the numbers are like the same.
The website's identified there.
Pardon me?
The website is identified there.
We really need to have the footer. I mean, you can keep that, Dan, but when you submit formally to us, if we can't find it, thank you.
The website is on that one.
The other thing I just want to say real quickly, because there's been a lot said about incentive zoning versus regular zoning. Incentive zoning is a part of state law relating to zoning, and it is an established part of how this town looks at land use policies. The reason I just want to say something now is because you, and I always appreciate, thank you for the vote of confidence that this board and others, you had indicated you're confident in our ability to review this project if it is submitted through what you've called and what others have called regular zoning. This board is not directly involved with non-incentive zoning projects. This board does, as your elected representatives, and I wanted to clarify that, this elected body does review and is engaged in, for example, we are the lead agency for the seeker review of this proposal because it is an incentive zoning proposal. That process would be very different. It would be subject to state law mandated standards for area variances and for use variances, which are very different. But this board would not be taking the same role in that sort of a proposal. And I just wanted to clarify that because you suggested that this board, and we appreciate your confidence in
No,
this
we're
board.
aware of that because we've had other development issues over the years, and with outcomes much what I expect with this one, that is everything that we would like to have happen probably won't happen, but there's a process that has integrity, and there's a responsible review by that town board, and when that ends, we say, okay, let's go. Same thing happened several years ago with the development right at the northeast corner, which is just like the last slice of Brighton before it turns into, yeah. So either way, but our preference would be let it be a regular zoning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone? Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm Ross Lanzafame. I live at 70 Schoolhouse Lane. And you're welcome to come visit my home. If you look right down the street from my home, you see the parcel. I look right down Schoolhouse Lane toward the proposed development. I live in Brighton, and I selected my street because of the quality of life and the quality of our neighborhoods. And I know a few people have said, you know, there's some nefarious intent either in the development or in the opposition. And I disagree with both. As a resident, my intent is purely to maintain the quality of life of the town I've chosen. And I think this development will impact traffic. And traffic is the central issue. It'll impact traffic on Monroe Avenue, it'll impact traffic on Clover Street, and it'll impact traffic on Allen's Creek. So I've looked at, you know, what's been proposed, and I know that there is the Whole Foods, wonderful brand. I shop at Whole Foods when I'm not in the area. This will be the only Whole Foods store between Albany and Toronto. This is a unique Whole Foods. This isn't a run-of-the-mill grocery store. This is a novelty store. So any traffic projections for the normal run-of-the-mill 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 grocery store, I don't believe will bear out with a novelty store. This store truly is going to generate traffic. For me, it's going to be wonderful. I can walk there. I can walk down the proposed new and improved trail down the street. But many others will be driving, and they'll be taking Clover Street, Monroe, and Allen's Creek to get there, as will the delivery trucks. The Starbucks that's moving, it's been described by the developer as just a replacement. We're just moving it from down the street to this location. Well, that would be true if it were a retail location without a drive-through. Now, why is a drive-through important? I just looked at the Starbucks website, and their CEO is touting that drive-throughs are their future. They are looking to make the shopping experience more convenient and accessible for the consumer, and they're citing their new stores where there is or is the potential for high traffic. Wow, this sounds like an opportunity, doesn't it? Right at the entrance to 590, so you can phone in your order. Yes, you actually can phone in an order to Starbucks and pick it up at the drive-through window on your way to work, or the same thing on the way home. So again, this isn't apples to apples. It's not taking that lovely little store on the corner of Clover and Monroe and moving it. It's putting in a drive-through window that's going to increase the traffic. Now, I am a lawyer, but I'm not a zoning lawyer. I have no idea what I'm talking about here, but I will tell you I did look up on the web and found this great guide to planning and zoning that New York State issues, and I did find section 261-B of the town law, which talks about incentive zoning, and it says the purpose of the system of incentive or bonus zoning shall be to advance the town's specific physical, cultural, and social policies in accordance with the town's comprehensive plan and in coordination with other community planning mechanisms or land use techniques. So I look at this and I said to myself, how does a Starbucks drive-through or a grocery store that's 2.5 times what the parcel is zoned for advance anything related to the town's specific physical, cultural, and social policies in accordance with our comprehensive plan? And I looked at our comprehensive plan and I didn't see anything for Monroe Avenue, this particular part of Monroe Avenue, that addressed the need for 2 high uses on one particular parcel. I know someone said at the last public hearing that if this is such a great project as a whole, once it's built and the traffic is there, we'll have no choice other than to open the other accesses, or in the alternative, only approve part of the project. And if the traffic doesn't come to fruition, then the developer can come back and add to the parcel. But to do it all at once, that is letting the horses out of the barn, and then we're all stuck with the aftermath and they'll be running down my street. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ross.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Yes, Mr. Heyer.
My name is Robert Heyer. I live at 169 Chelmsford Road. I lived in Brighton most of my life. I work for the Highway Department. I'm also a safety officer in the fire district. Monroe Avenue is a heavy thoroughfare. I would say most of our highest accident zone is Monroe and Clover, mostly because people were turning left. So you're going to put this plaza in, you're going to put a traffic light there, and you're going to have left-hand turn arrows because it's the only way you're going to get the traffic in and out. I want to know, all I hear is traffic study of flow. How many cars can you store between lights? Because right now, with the 590 feeding off both east and westbound, those lights are synchronized on the traffic down to Clover Street. You're going to put a light in the middle of that. That traffic's going to back up past Westfall, Allen's Creek, and especially in a high flow area. I know in the winter when we're plowing that road, it takes us 5 light changes to go from Allen's Creek Road to Clover Street because there's just so much traffic. Now you're going to put another light in there, you're going to back that traffic up even more. I don't see how you can have a development there with only one means of access. Okay, so, and I know people don't want to hear about putting stuff on the Clover Street, but I try getting out on Elmwood Avenue at rush hour from Commonwealth Road. If I have to go to a fire call, I have to wait 4 or 5 minutes, blue light going, nobody cares, they just want to go. There's so much traffic from U of R. That's the same thing with Westfall Road. It's all U of R traffic. Clover Street coming from Pittsford into Brighton, that's where most of the commuters come to get on the expressway. So Clover Street, south of Monroe Avenue, is a real busy road. I don't think it's that busy going northbound because it doesn't really take you anywhere. It takes you to residential neighborhoods. So, but I really would like to see when they do these traffic studies, how they're going to set up the traffic signals and how many cars they can store in a 1,200-foot area. You don't have to store that many cars. And that's just going to back everything up into the other intersections. So I think that when they do this, whatever traffic study, the stoplight issue and how many cars you're going to get through because you're going to have to time those lights and it's going to back things up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board? Yes. sorry, I can't always see who you are. They're back in the back row. Hi.
Judy Van Houten. I live at 205 Shoreham Drive. And I'm thinking of several things. Number one, I am not opposed to Whole Foods. I'm opposed to the size of the development. And I am also the face of someone who has lived on my street for 35 years and has watched as the traffic has increased. And I am personally and physically aware of what it is to drive there on a regular basis. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's extremely hard. No one here has mentioned recently the buses. Also, at rush hour time of the day, there are buses at Harley-Allendale that enter what we're talking about, and from Harley School. And I've heard that even if the cuts aren't allowed initially, or if they're not planning on putting them in there, I've also heard that the DOT is obliged at some point to step in if it is okay to overbuild in the beginning. I am also aware that that corridor between Allen's Creek and Monroe on Clover is where the newspapers and the TV suggest people go as a detour when there's construction. So right now, it's an overflow escape as well as this nice little supposedly hidden place for us in our neighborhood. And I am suggesting that from where our neighborhood is positioned, we are bordered by Clover, we're bordered by Allen's Creek, and basically as I drive daily, everywhere I go, there is traffic backed up. And they took a lane out to make it safer right there. And I said, hopefully they understood when they took a lane out, it was necessarily going to back traffic up. I don't know if they determined at that point in time how far back it was going to be backed up. But then people get backed up and then they start looking for a way out. So when they were redoing Allen's Creek Road, people were cutting through Whitestone looking for a quick way to Clover Street. And it's sheer residential. We don't have sidewalks. There aren't streetlights at night. People are always in the street with kids, with dogs, jogging, whatever. And if you don't know the circles, it could be potentially very dangerous. And as I did say in a letter, that if you look now, people cut through the bank, they cut through the Starbucks, they cut through Mann's to avoid the corner. They cut through the vets. Why are they all cutting through? We know why they're all cutting through, because they don't want to wait, and it's only going to get worse. And there is no place, like if they decide they need to put a cut and a light on Clover by my street, there's no place for anybody to go unless they start backing up on my street, which is full of kids and people who are used to walking freely and peacefully down the road. I had a question. I think I need a DEIS for dummies because, as hard as I try, I've been trying to text, I've been trying to send carbon copies, which I'm not good at, and things like that. And it's very difficult for a resident who's trying to understand the scope of the facts and the laws when basically you're just dealing with what your heart's telling you. Your gut knows this isn't a good idea. Your gut knows there's already too much traffic. Your gut knows all these impending dooms are going to happen, or the possibility of. And I don't know how I personally figure out all those pages in a way that makes sense to me. Because all I care about is maintaining the quality of life that I have had on my street for 35 years. I don't feel it should be taken away from me. I don't want to be like the house next to CVS that all of a sudden finds this barren spot at the end of my street. So instead of coming down this lovely tree-lined spot between Clover and Allen's Creek, I have no idea if they're taking all the trees down, but that'll be me next to CVS. If I have to leave my street and find barren or big lights, bright lights, whatever. Maybe it's written in that thing. I don't know. The other thing I was curious about is I've heard several times talk about how the Niellis have talked to the neighborhood. Are there records of whatever these conversations are and who they've spoken to and what things were addressed that we could, those of us who weren't included in those conversations, could read? Because frankly, no one has ever approached me other than in the beginning when I was concerned about the traffic and it was suggested that they could put a no outlet sign at the end of my street and that would be the solution for the problem. So I just want you to know that at the level that I'm trying my hardest to comprehend all the good work you're doing, and I can't imagine how hard it is, but I'm trying as hard from my point of view to get it to a space that I can comprehend, and I'm being told that if if the traffic study is closed and we can fathom what it's like to work on a daily basis through the traffic in our neighborhood. We know what to avoid, when to avoid it, what to expect, because we live there. But the concept of having somebody tell us that it's going to be okay now, knowing that the DOT can step in and will be obliged to step in if there's a problem with too much traffic after this is developed, it's very hard to be a good citizen when your heart is trying so hard to defend yourself and being open to wonderful possibilities and trying to be fair, but the complexities of this are just really huge. So what I'm hoping is that when you think about this traffic thing, you think about those of us who navigate every day and know the reality of what it's like to live where we live and what to expect and what is coming at us. And also, it's just, if this would just be like it's always been, regular zoning, we've coexisted for years, it's been perfect for us. So we don't want more, we just want what we have. We just want Mr. Daniele to want less. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And I can just assure you, the effort that you've put in trying to understand it. I mean, we did receive your email. You obviously...
I thought I lost it.
No, not at all. You obviously put a lot of effort in, and we appreciate it. I do want to mention that not only did we receive, there's a listing in the agenda of various communications that we have received since the last meeting. That was cut off before most of what came in today, but in addition to the email from Judy Van Houten, we also have email today from Kathleen Wilkinson, from Richard Gilo, from Jean Schenker, from Deborah and Robert Hall, and some of those you may not have seen them all yet, but we have received them. They will all be included in the record of the public hearing. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during the public hearing? Is there anyone from the board or council that would like to comment? Just to be clear, well, we are part of the same review process, and I anticipate that there will be written comments, perhaps extensive, from myself and other members of the board as it relates to the DEIS. But is there anyone that today wants to comment on the DEIS during the public hearing? I had the opportunity earlier to talk a little bit about incentive zoning, and although I had planned to talk about it in more length, the earlier comment gave me the opportunity to at least talk briefly about the fact that both incentive zoning and what has been called regular zoning, both are, if you will, regular zoning. They are both part of the New York state law. They are both part of our own town code. They are different procedures, again, that largely involve different boards, and that's maybe a subtle distinction, but it is a distinction between the two procedures. I will stop talking now. I do see someone else that would like to address the town board. Come on, please come to the microphone. Thank you. And I ask you to do that only because there are people at home, and
okay.
It's important for the TV.
My name is Kate Weiskopf. I live on North Landing Road. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of Brighton. My question was to you, why is this project incentive zoning? Who decided that, when, and why?
This process started with an application from the developer that was submitted under the incentive zoning procedures of state law and the town law.
So it was your decision to accept the application for incentive zoning, as opposed to sending it to whoever decides regular zoning?
The town board, the town received an application for incentive zoning and did take the initial first step of accepting it and began the review process that you are a part of today, yes.
Okay, because a lot of us feel that it should be under what we're calling regular zoning. Is there a way to push this project to that zoning?
I'm really not going to get into all of the sort of the hypotheticals of what might and might not happen, other than to say that obviously the board continues to conduct a very thorough review, not only under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, but also, and I've heard from a number of people tonight questioning, not questioning whether it should be incentive zoning or not, but questioning the magnitude of the incentive, of the amenities, the term is amenities, which is a part of this hearing. This is a two-pronged hearing, if you will. It is a hearing under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, but it is also a hearing under our own incentive zoning code, under which we are charged with considering exactly that question, whether the specific amenities that are being offered sufficiently reflect the impact of the incentives, which are somewhat akin to what would be called variances if we were looking under the traditional zoning. So that is a part of what we are doing right now, and so that's a process. You know, both processes are processes that, you know, this board takes very seriously. I appreciated hearing, I think, from both council, the track record that the town of Brighton has in incentive zoning. We have a lengthy track record, this board and predecessor boards, of considering projects under incentive zoning, and that's what we're looking at here.
Supervisor, if I could just make a
Sure.
small clarification, because your question was, did the town accept the incentive zoning application? So the first clarification I want to make is the town has no power at all to reject any application made by any developer in the first instance. Anybody can come before the town, the staff, and make application for anything, and the town is obligated to consider it before it makes a decision. So if what you're asking is, did the people at the front desk say you can't submit that? No, because we can't do that. We have to allow people to submit, anyone, homeowners, business owners alike, anyone to submit an application for whatever it is that they want to apply for, whether it's regular zoning or incentive zoning. Second clarification is the town did take an initial step. That initial step was only to say, based on the preliminary application made, that the town board felt that the proposal was worthy of further consideration, and then referred that proposal to the town planning board for an advisory report. What is most important for you and the entire public to understand is that no decision has been made to approve this project as an incentive zoning proposal. So the town board, in conducting today's hearing, and I would imagine in conducting future public hearings on the incentive zoning issue, will be listening to comments from the public before it makes a decision to approve or disapprove the incentive zoning application. So I wanted to make clear that when you're asking, has the town accepted an incentive zoning application, in no way has this town board approved or made any final decision to approve or disapprove the incentive zoning application at this time.
Okay, and so then I would ask you, if you disapprove the incentive zoning, what happens?
It's up to the developer. It's his project.
So he could or would reapply to the regular zoning?
He may not.
And again, that's why I really didn't want to, I don't think it's appropriate to try to answer hypothetical questions about what might happen, because a number of things.
Okay, it's just hard for people like me who isn't a lawyer to understand how this comes about.
I do understand that.
Because we are questioning the zoning, incentive zoning versus regular zoning. I think in part because people like me would interpret that to mean incentive zoning may mean that with enough incentive, the developer gets to build something bigger than regular zoning would allow. Maybe I understand it incorrectly, but that's the impression I get.
Both what is being called regular zoning, and there is really no such thing as regular zoning, both of these processes, I have to stress again, are specifically provided for both under state law and under the town law. Both of these processes have procedures in place for, in one they're called variances, in another they're called incentives that can change, including dramatically increase the area, which is one type of what is called an area variance, in either type of zoning structure. And there are somewhat different standards. As you look at them, you may look at them, one being better, one being worse. They're different. I'm not going to pass judgment on whether one is better, one is worse. But both processes afford a proponent of a project to seek changes to what the black letter of the town's zoning ordinance provides. And it's a question, as I discussed with Mr. Gillette, one of the questions is who is making those decisions? And again, Mr. Gillette referred to this elected body, which does make those decisions in the incentive zoning process. The zoning board is the primary body. The zoning board of appeals is the primary body that would be making decisions on so-called variances, whether area variances or use variance under so-called traditional zoning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
I just want to say something. I apologize for coming in late. I got a paper cut in my eye, and I can't see you all very well, but I was watching this on television, and I thought.
Thank you, Louis, because thank you for coming in, because I
Okay.
didn't realize when
Just
it
don't call
happened
on me to
today.
read anything tonight, but it's such an important issue for me and for the entire board. We're not taking anything lightly, and I thought, oh my gosh, if they're going to have a vote tonight, I want to be there.
Well, we're not going to have a vote.
I know.
You mean-
But, I mean, I didn't know how this was going to end, but I want you to know that we all take this very seriously, and it's a struggle. It really is. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm having just as much trouble as some of you in understanding it, but I am getting answers from the rest of the attorneys here, and I just appreciate everybody coming out. Thanks.
Thanks, Louise. Ken, is there anyone else that would like to address the board at this time during the public hearing? Ken, can I ask you, as counsel, for your thoughts, and if you feel a need to do that in executive session, to advise us of that too, but okay.
No. So I want to provide some small comment to the board regarding where we are procedurally now. First, let me start out with what I think you all know, and obviously what the public already knows, and that's this is a difficult project to analyze and decide on, but it is your decision to analyze and decide on what should happen with this project as the lead agency under seeker. And what's important is that you feel that you have been provided with adequate information to make decisions, take a hard look at all of the issues, and then be able to elaborate on your decisions in a reasonable way when you do finally adopt and issue a final environmental impact statement regarding this project. I think at the same time, it's fairly clear that traffic has been a focal point of the hearings. We've heard comments from experts on both sides and from the public. I believe over 50 speakers at this point in time between the two public hearings, most of which who have commented on the traffic issue in one fashion or another. Ultimately, you will be receiving, I understand, from our town consultant, Stantec, a detailed report commenting on the traffic impacts and on the developer's traffic study.
And on the DEIS as a whole.
And on the DEIS as a whole. I understand from Mr. Bergdorf that the Clover Allens Creek traffic consultant will also be submitting something for your consideration. And that will need to happen, obviously, before the public comment period ends, as the supervisor indicated earlier. So there's still quite a bit to do, quite a bit of work to do before you make a decision on incentive zoning, certainly. But it would be my recommendation at this point in time that you do close the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement, allow the public comment period to continue as is required, collect the comments from the public, collect the comments from your consultant, and then sit down and start the hard work of getting that final environmental impact statement completed so that you can take action on that. I would recommend that you keep open the public hearing on the incentive zoning, as I do not believe that it would be appropriate to make any decisions on incentive zoning and on this project as a whole until the completion of the seeker project with the adoption of a final environmental impact statement.
Thank you, Ken.
Ken, could
Louise, yeah.
Can you, for me, could you say, what is the difference between keeping the hearing open for incentive zoning but not for the other part?
So the seeker process is the process of having sufficient information to allow you to go forward to a final report outlining what the environmental impacts will be, so that you know what all of those impacts will be, how the developer has proposed to mitigate them, if at all, whether those impacts can in fact be mitigated. Without going comprehensively over the entire state environmental quality review law, that essentially is the importance, that you have identified the significant environmental issues, taken a hard look at those issues, and have some way of articulating in a reasonable way or elaborating in a reasonable way as to what findings you're going to make relative to those impacts, so what impacts they will have and whether they'll be mitigated. The ultimate decision, though, is should the project be approved, and that's a different decision, right? Should the project be approved is different than what impacts will this project have and whether those
But
impacts.
wouldn't, if it went with incentive zoning, the impact would be different than if it didn't go for incentive zoning, wouldn't it?
No.
Not necessarily.
No.
There's no reason inherently that it would be any different.
No, I mean, the project is the project is the project, whether it was incentive zoning or regular zoning. Whether you have a developer come in with a proposal to have the town board grant incentives in exchange for amenities offered by the developer to get an overall project approved, or whether you have a developer come in and apply for approval and then apply to the zoning board of appeals for the variances and to the planning board for site plan approval for the project, ultimately you could propose the same project, and both would be subject to an environmental review. But if it goes through the zoning process without incentive zoning, there is no decision that the town board would have, no say that the town board would have, no say that anyone elected to office would have regarding the proposal. So that is procedurally a difference, but substantively, those same issues would have to be analyzed, and the impacts of the project would presumably be potentially the same. The analysis that has to be taken under the State Environmental Quality Review Act would have to be the same one way or the other.
I think it's significant to look back at where the process has come. The town board previously required what was called a scoping hearing. A scoping hearing, or for that matter, an actual scope, it does not have to be a public process. Some of you were here for what was a very, very extensive and thought-provoking scoping hearing. That, again, is a part of the environmental review. The scoping hearing was held under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. We put together what I recall was a 17-page scope. We've heard from two different lawyers tonight, and they don't totally, well, we've heard from more than that, but we've heard from a lawyer representing the developer, we've heard from a lawyer representing the neighborhood. They have somewhat different views, not surprisingly, as to whether this document that we have in front of us meets the seeker standard of complete and adequate for public review. And as someone mentioned, I think more than one person mentioned, that is a different standard from perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't have to be here. If it was perfect, this would be great. But that's not the standard. The standard is whether it is adequate for public review, and we take public input very seriously. We've heard a number of comments tonight that relate to the contents of the draft environmental impact statement, many of which are traffic related. And I do. I share concerns relating to some of the traffic issues. Absolutely. as I had indicated, I will be submitting some very extensive comments. I have some concerns, for example, relating to some discussions about what time period is the correct time period for analysis, the 30th busiest hour. That was a comment that I made to the initial draft environmental impact statement. It's something that has been there is a response in the current draft environmental impact statement. That continues to be something that I will be addressing in more detail in my written comments relating to this draft environmental impact statement. But, and part of the reason I don't want to answer hypothetical questions, we can go down all sorts of, trees here. If we in fact make a decision tonight that we are going to close the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement piece of this, we are by no means completed with the environmental review process. We do have a representative of Stantec with us. We will be getting commentary from Stantec. There are a couple of different paths that this board could go down. Once we get that material, once we get the full opportunity to analyze the information Mr. Bergdorf is indicating he's submitting, what other residents have indicated they're submitting, Mr. Spitzer, who could not be here tonight, has submitted and may be submitting more. There are different roads that we can go down, but they all involve a continued, thorough environmental review with this board. Those of you that are here, you can see the Post-it notes on the text of this document. This is a document that has consumed a lot of my time and will continue to consume a lot of my time and attention, and I know that's true of my colleagues. So the fact, if this board acts tonight on Ken's recommendation, does not mean the path is clear to anything. It is another step in what is an important environmental review that, because this body is the lead agency, we are committed to do and committed to do in accordance with secret standards.
Does that just mean that the time, at the present time, there will be no more input from the public? No, like an open hearing?
No more oral testimony, correct, but written comments will be received through July 25th at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. is what is currently there now. I believe that one of my colleagues is asking to go into executive session to discuss the legal recommendation that you have just made. It may perhaps be to discuss matters that are the subject of attorney-client privilege.
To the extent that you wish to go into executive session for those matters,
We've heard your recommendation. We have also heard some suggestion from one of the attorneys tonight concerning legal briefs and possible litigation, and I believe that that is what, if a council member wishes to make that motion.
I'd like to make that motion that we go into executive session for that purpose.
For what purpose, Jim?
To discuss exactly what you just did.
A motion for executive session needs to specifically state the legal purpose under which you are requesting the executive session, which would specifically limit the subject matters that could be discussed in that executive session.
Just relevant to the point that we're just on right now. Okay?
I don't either. I don't either. I'm really not, I would rather we not go into executive session unless, I mean, at this point, I have not heard a specific reason to go into.
I think what Jim was saying was to discuss if, I guess, the possibilities of.
Jim has
Right, or you can do it
made the
yourself.
motion, and at this point, I don't find it to be a valid motion to go into executive session.
I haven't heard a second either, I don't think.
Nor have I heard a second, but.
Now, Bill, we are going to be voting on whether or not to close the hearing, is that correct, on both the DEIS
Not
and
on both.
incentive zoning?
Not on both. Under no circumstances will we close the public hearing on the incentive zoning application itself.
It would be a terrible mistake to do that.
And again, I have to say that if this board does close the public hearing on seeker, the seeker process will continue and could go down several possible
No,
paths.
I quite well appreciate that, but we're talking about closing a hearing for two different aspects, is that correct? Is what I heard council say.
No.
Ken has
I have
recommended.
recommended only closing the hearing for the seeker purposes to close the hearing on the draft environmental impact statement. I have not recommended that you close the hearing on incentive zoning.
I understand, there are the two aspects that can be closed or not. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I suppose the board could vote to close the hearing on incentive zoning. I am strongly recommending that you do
I've heard
not
you
do
on
that.
Yes.
And I believe, and I'll just say what I believe on why we should not go into executive session, and that is because I think your discussion about whether you should close the public hearing for the DEIS is something that the public is allowed to listen to your discussion.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that should be an executive session.
We're being asked to make a decision on whether to close various aspects of the hearing, correct, tonight?
Oh.
So there'll come a time when I'm being asked for a vote, is that correct?
Could somebody explain to us what would be different with closing or not closing the issue and discussion here? Please, to a layman.
I'll take a crack at it. I think I have already answered Councilman Novros's question along those same lines, but in summary, and this is really for the board's decision, not the public's consideration, but for the board's edification, the idea would be to close the public hearing on the DEIS because you've heard the comments from the public on the DEIS and specifically on traffic, that you will be receiving, you have received many written comments, you will be receiving further written comments up through July 25th at 5 p.m., including your own consultants' comments, and that you believe that with those comments and with the testimony you have heard, you are prepared to enter into the decision-making of what the environmental impacts of this project are, that you have identified what those, or will be able to identify what those impacts are, and whether they can be and have been mitigated or shall be mitigated by the developer. Take a hard look at each one of those potential impacts and discuss in a reasonable way or articulate or elaborate in a reasonable way the reasons for your findings about those environmental impacts. That you have enough testimony, oral testimony. I mean, you've had two, I will just say, you've had two public hearings. They've been well attended. You've listened to everyone. You haven't cut off any speakers or sent anyone away. Everyone's had a chance to speak. And you've received, as I said, a lot of written comments, and you're going to continue to allow written comments to be submitted. So I believe, that's why I believe you have what you need for closing the hearing relative to the seeker process. Having said that, I do not believe it is proper to close the public hearing relative to incentive zoning because you have not made findings yet relative to the environmental impacts, and you need to do that.
And we have not had the full opportunity to review and consider the adequacy of what the developer has called amenities. And I say that very advisedly, what the developer has called amenities. Part of this process, part of why this public hearing is going on, is for us to hear from you, but ultimately also give our own thought and review and comment to whether the amenities described by the developer are in fact amenities, and whether they are sufficient to meet the standards of incentive zoning. So that is something that we have not, certainly to my mind, completed that process, which is another reason why I would absolutely not be in favor of closing the public hearing on the incentive zoning application itself and the consideration of the relative value and merit of the amenities versus the incentives.
I think some of the confusion is because the incentive zoning and the DEIS fines are all in one document. So you're going to close half of it and not close the other?
No, they're not in one. There is an incentive zoning application. This whole process began with a written application from the developer.
But in this notebook, they're talking about the amenities.
They're talking about it, yes, because that is actually technically part of the seeker review process as well as the incentive zoning review itself. But the incentive zoning application that is the subject of this hearing is a different document than this one. It is referenced. Yes, we did, Louise.
Well,
before you go on, just again, I'm just trying to keep us procedurally on track here.
Absolutely.
Normally, when a public hearing is closed, as you know, the supervisor simply declares public hearing is closed, and it's not really one that is much debated or discussed. Here, you have a decision, a procedural decision to make, and it would seem appropriate to me that somebody make a motion to close the public hearing, and if that motion is seconded, then you can have a discussion, which is what you're sort of doing now, about whether you should close the public hearing. So procedurally, I'd encourage somebody on the town board to make a motion to close the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement and then have a discussion about it.
Would someone like to make that motion?
First of all, no, it's wrong in my motion.
Okay, Jim's motion to go into executive session, thank you. Jim's motion to go into executive session has been withdrawn.
I would like to make a motion, but it's not the motion you're asking for. My motion would be that we not close the DEIS hearing, that we extend it for another 2 weeks. I will give my rationale for that when and if I get a second on that.
Okay.
I second.
We have a motion and a second.
The reason for that motion is, although, Bob, I have been in too many court proceedings that I wished I'd had more time and wished I'd met a deadline. Invariably, I can't count a half a dozen times in 40 years where a judge has said, no, he wouldn't give me more time. I wish we'd had that competing traffic study. I would like also the Daniellis to have the opportunity in a more comprehensive fashion to respond to that and have the public be able to respond to that as well. That traffic is too important an issue. I considered what was presented to me, the traffic study, to be adequate for discussion as presented by the Daniellis. But having spent more time with it and hearing what Mr. Bergdorf has said, I want to give them that extra time. If we close it tonight, then we're going to have required that all written documents be in by the 25th, and Bob, you tell me that it's going to be by the end of the month?
I did not hear him say that it would not be by the 25th.
I believe that's what he said, it would be by the
I
end
did
of the
not
month.
hear him say that.
Okay, well, I did, but okay, that's neither here. So that's the rationale. I am against closing the DEIS hearing.
Just I wanted to point out another option for the board. So currently, the public hearing is open and has not been closed. Currently, if the hearing were closed tonight, by state law, that public comment period must last at least a 10 business day period. And right now, we're saying that that would end on July 25th at 5 p.m. The town board could close the public hearing and extend the public comment period beyond that July 25th date as well.
I appreciate that, Ken.
So that could also be done. The other thing that I'll say is, and I started my comments by saying this, as much as it is helpful to the board to have public input and public comment, it ultimately is the board's decision. And all of this data and all of the reports, whether they're the McFarland-Johnson report or the Stantec report or the SRF report or the DEIS itself, are for the board to be able to make a decision as lead agency, for the board to take a hard look at all of these issues. And that's what you have to get yourself in a position to do. So get yourself, I mean, if you're not comfortable that you're there or that you won't be able to be there without having somebody else in the public tell you how to read the McFarland-Johnson report, or somebody else in the public to tell you how to read the SRF report, then I understand your comments. Otherwise, I think the public has spoken on this.
I have a question just regarding the process, because right now on the table is we have a motion to close the public hearing on the draft.
No.
Or a motion to keep it
To
open.
extend it for 2
To
weeks.
keep it open, but that's the question that we're discussing, whether or not to keep it open or to close it. So my question is there further opportunities for public hearings once the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement is ultimately closed?
Absolutely.
Can maybe a description as to how that will play out? Because right now we have the draft environmental impact statement. We have a public comment period that's going to end at some point down the road. We know there's going to be additional information coming in. What happens then with that draft environmental impact statement, all of the comments, this additional information then down the road toward the final environmental
Right.
impact
So maybe I can get to the nub of this. Right. Yeah. So ultimately what you get to is a final environmental impact statement with findings that say, here's going to be the environmental impacts and here's how they are or are not mitigated or dealt with by the developer. There's going to be a further public hearing on incentive zoning. We've said that. We're at least that's my recommendation, is you don't close that. And at that public hearing on incentive zoning, certainly one of the issues I would expect you're going to hear about is town board. You made findings about the environmental impacts. They're pretty significant. Don't approve the incentive zoning proposal because the amenities being offered are inadequate for the incentives that the developer is seeking. So that's certainly because of the impacts, traffic and otherwise, that this project may have. And certainly the developer and supporters of the project will say the opposite, but absolutely that discussion and that public input would have an opportunity to be heard by you and considered by you before you make the ultimate decision on whether this project should be approved. Absolutely.
And even before, or even separate from that, it is possible that those findings will themselves be so strongly indicative that there are environmental impacts here that cannot, in your mind, be mitigated, that you cannot, through the seeker process, issue positive findings.
Yes.
But so that's, and again, I didn't want to get into hypotheticals. I don't want to go down all of these different trees.
Let's put a sharp point on it. So when you adopt your findings at the end of the seeker process and you say, here's our final environmental impact statement, and here's our findings as to what the environmental impacts are, you could also, at that time, end the incentive zoning process by saying, we're no longer interested in considering this under incentive zoning, thank you very much, and end the project.
Because the environmental impacts cannot, in the board's mind,
Be properly mitigated.
properly mitigated.
And one other thing, and I'll just, might as well throw it out there, the other possibility is, and you're asking about further opportunity for public comment and public input, the other possibility is you get to the end of the environmental review process and have findings that suggest, or the consultant's report that suggests that maybe the developer needs to submit a supplemental environmental impact statement to deal with some of these traffic issues that have not been fully dealt with. And that certainly is a possibility.
And I know this is all, this is sort of why I was hoping not to have to work through all these very hypothetical but real possibilities for what could happen. I understand the thought on your motion, Chris. I also, the environmental review process, the seeker review process, is to comment, is to make public and written comment to a draft environmental impact statement. It is not to make comment to other people's or parties' other submissions. This hearing is on the draft environmental impact statement. And I understand and I know the desire to get, for example, the McFarland document to know what Stantec is saying. But those are not what this public hearing is called to consider. This public hearing is called to consider this draft environmental impact statement with these figures and many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of appendices in an attached thumb drive. That is the subject of the public hearing. And holding the public hearing open, as you said, to give more time, and you're right. We all, those of us that practice law, know it is it's sometimes unforeseen as to how long it's going to take to submit written documents, and extensions are routinely granted. But those are extensions to consider this document that does exist, unless the developer of its own accord were to make changes to us now, or at some, not now, I mean realistic, but at some future time while we're still engaged here. So I guess you're going to have to convince me why, having gone through the lengthy scoping process where rightly traffic was discussed at length, and before we had any of these reports, and I recognize that difference. Now, with two long, one longer than tonight, public hearings, a continued opportunity, which as Ken indicated, could be extended to allow written materials to continue to come in, but how further extending when we've had those lengthy opportunities to critique this document, which is the subject of the public hearing, why that need is not met if we were to, for example, extend the period for written comment.
It's simply, Bill, that I would like the opportunity for the public, if they wish, and I'm impressed that tonight, that there's not the huge overflowing crowd that there was 2 weeks ago, which admittedly and frustratingly I was out of town for. But would like to have heard all of those comments.
And of course, they're
available.
on YouTube.
Yes, but been there in person so that people could see me listening to them as well. But I don't know that we're going to get that much more comment from the public at a further hearing. But at the same time, I want the public to have that opportunity. And I believe that the McFarland report, again, based upon what Mr. Bergdorf has presented, will give me their assistance in reviewing this document, helping me focus on technical things, because folks have said, hey, I'm not a lawyer. Well, I am a lawyer, but I'm not a zoning lawyer. I'm as much a layman perhaps as most of you folks as far as this goes. My belief is, my hope is that this McFarland-Johnson report will give me more insight into what I should be looking for and what I should focus on in this report. Just getting it in writing probably will suffice, and I think I probably will be satisfied with that. But I wonder if there's not something the public could add to that.
I would note there's no guarantee that that report will be submitted to give you sufficient time to review it before whenever the final, the 10 days out from an extended public hearing date. And I would also note that you will have the opportunity. We have the town's consultant. We have Stantec, which is an international engineering firm with traffic consultants who have long since begun the process of reviewing the traffic study and are available to meet with you and with any
I've
of
already
us
begun my
to
written
get
comments
guidance. And I appreciate what you have begun to compile. Stantec, the town's consultant, is available, and you don't have to run the risk. Again, we don't know. Mr. Bergdorf said he thought it would be in before the end of the month.
If that makes it easier, we will commit to having the report in before the end of the public comment on the 25th. That was never the issue. The issue was we don't have the opportunity.
Bob, can I ask you to?
I'm sorry. I don't want this to be held open for the wrong reason.
Right.
We will get this submitted by the 25th. That's not the issue. That's not why we asked the public hearing to be held open. It's because there is so much missing from this traffic report that when this wonderful firm of Stantec, as you just mentioned, is going to come up with this report, we then want to be able to comment on it. When they go back and say to the developer, you've missed A, B, C, then our consultants can look at it. If this had been a full DEIS with all the information, I would agree you should close the public hearing. We submit that didn't happen, and that's what we're frustrated about.
Mr. Goldman?
If I may, everyone keeps on talking about how bad this traffic report is, yet we don't have anybody who has given us comment relative to that. And as the supervisor pointed out, and as the town attorney pointed out, the process of the public hearing and the public comment period is to obtain all that information. Once we obtain all that information, then this board goes and analyzes the report, which they've had a head start on since we've had it since May 22nd, since it was accepted. We get, at that point, we also have the Stantec report will be in hand. DOT comments hopefully will be in hand because they are apprised of what the date is by which they're supposed to have comments. And the McFarland-Johnson report. If there's a desire to have, as the supervisor pointed out, the town's consultant to go and boil down all of those things, then that's the route that it should go. But if what I'm hearing is that, okay, we're going to look to get all the McFarland-Johnson report in. If we extend the oral comment period, what's everyone going to talk about? They're going to say how good what's going on with the McFarland-Johnson report and critique the SRF report. That's not what the public hearing is meant to do. The public hearing is meant to address the EIS. There has been ample opportunity to speak on this. Written comments will occur, and the public hearing on the incentive zoning itself will remain open, so if there are any comments as they relate to the underlying application, they will follow. So I'm
Jerry,
you wouldn't be
I would
surprised.
just say that the SRF report is an integral part of, is a fundamental basis for the draft environmental impact statement.
That's correct.
I would look differently upon the Stantec or the McFarland
yeah.
report, but commenting on the SRF report is part and parcel of commenting on
Right.
the DEIS. And whatever the date is, I gave one
That's correct.
very small and actually very much abbreviated piece of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no doubt that there will be, questions and comments.
There will be.
In written form to that document. But again, to my mind, it is not, this hearing is a public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement. It is not a public hearing on Stantec's comments to the draft environmental impact statement, on McFarland's comments to the draft environmental, because very honestly, once we do that, we potentially are in a loop. Well, Stantec has comments to the McFarland report. Are we going to have comments to the Stantec comments, to the McFarland report comments, to the SRF report that's part of the DEIS? That gets us into a really, what I am concerned is a procedural quagmire that doesn't benefit anybody. And maybe you can convince me why that can't happen, but we've already started the first loop of that loop, which is the suggestion, but there can be no guarantee of that because I don't know when Stantec, you're putting Stantec, our consultant, whose job is to review and compile all of these comments, to the extent that they come in very late in the process, that makes the job very hard on Stantec. So now you get to the end of the process and someone says, we haven't had a chance to look at the Stantec report, and we've already heard that. Again, this is a public hearing with a written comment period on the DEIS, not on comments to the and in a sense, it's not too dissimilar to that boilerplate message, but it's a real message that those of you that come to a lot of these public hearings hear me say. Direct your comments to the town board, not to comments of other members of the audience. And this is not too different than that.
Okay, if we close this public hearing,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
On the
and then I'll let Bob speak.
we are not closing the hearing on incentive zoning.
That's correct.
That is a big concern of the public at large. A lot of people, including myself.
But I think the public, I've heard people, and we've gotten a lot of letters saying,
Yes, we
don't
have.
close the public hearing on seeker.
Right.
So I think in fairness, closing of both issues are issues that the public has had some level of interest in. Bob Bergdorf.
Let me just say, I think that the supervisor, Mr. Goldman, and myself are all in agreement on the process and on the law. What we're in disagreement on is whether this DIS had everything in it that it was supposed to have. If it had had everything in it that the scope required, if all of that was there, then I would agree with everything that's said tonight. The flaw here is that McFarland Johnson, Stantec, all these people putting stuff in now do not have the benefit of a properly prepared traffic report. Absolutely agree with you. You do not want to get in that quagmire. But we're starting with an improper foundation. That's our problem.
In your opinion.
In our opinion.
Let me address that point,
please.
Because what
Again,
Bob is saying now.
Gentlemen, if you would both continue
Why don't we say-
to introduce
No, I'm sorry.
yourself for the sake of the audience at home, but more importantly for the transcribing.
My name is Jerry Goldman, and I'm an attorney and agent for the developer. What Bob is suggesting right now is that the vote of this board to accept the DEIS as complete for public review is flawed. That is what he is saying. You've already made that determination. That is done. Now we are, because what I'm hearing is, oh, other people are saying it wasn't complete. Well, guess what? This board has already made that determination. We aren't revisiting that determination. What we are doing now is proceeding forward with it, and I don't want to take any more time.
Thank you, Jerry. Ken.
Yeah, while I appreciate Mr. Bergdorf and Mr. Goldman's comments, and perhaps Mr. Bergdorf wants to make some
I'm going to sit down right after
final
this because I think
final
we've beaten
remarks,
this to death.
But we are in the middle of a motion by the town board, which is debatable by the town board
I understand.
members.
But I think it's valuable and important to the understand. Please, in the audience, I think it's valuable and important for the board members. So I will continue to allow
The last point I want to make is there is a big difference between closing the public hearing for seeker and closing the public hearing for incentive zoning. Yes, the public hearing for incentive zoning will be left open, and we'll be having discussions on the merits of incentive zoning, on the, et cetera, if this board continues to do it and doesn't send it to the other boards. But that's different from closing the seeker public hearing. When the seeker public hearing is closed, public comment's over, we're done. We don't have any further ability to come back and we can do it in the incentive zoning hearing, but it's without the structure of the seeker process.
You may or may not have the ability in a public hearing on specifically limited to seeker issues. Ken, maybe.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this. It sounds to me like there is concern among the board that there will never be again an opportunity to hear from the public on traffic issues, particularly relative to this project. That's not true. The traffic problems will be discussed as part of the incentive zoning public hearing. I'm quite certain of it. The second thing that you've heard that is not true is that once you close the DEIS hearing, you will not be able to hear from the public again. First of all, there's the public comment period on the DEIS itself, which right now we're saying would last through at least July 25th at 5 p.m. Once you adopt your final environmental impact statement, setting forth all of the environmental impacts, taking a hard look at them, analyzing them, elaborating on your reasoning for the statements that you find relative to those, you need to wait at least 10 days before you can adopt findings relative to that final environmental impact statement. And in that period of time, or an extended period of time if you so choose, the public can make comments. You don't need to respond to those comments, you don't need to incorporate those comments, but the public is allowed to certainly make comments on the final environmental impact statement as well. It's perfectly permissible to do. So that there will be more opportunity, much more opportunity, I should say, for public comment. The last thing that I want to point out, and I think Bill has done a good job of pointing this out, is that your consultant is your consultant. The town's consultant, Stantec, is for your purposes. So we know two things. One is Stantec has already given you its opinion that the draft environmental impact statement that we are now holding this hearing on was complete and adequate for public review. That doesn't mean everything in the world was in it and analyzed perfectly, but it was complete and adequate for public review. That was your consultant's expert opinion, and you relied on that in starting the public hearing. Mr. Bergdorf has a different opinion on that, and other people have different opinions as well. But your consultant, your expert, gave you that advice, and you relied on it. The second thing we know is that Stantec's work is not done, that Stantec will be issuing a report relative to the DEIS, traffic included, but other issues as well, and that will go into your consideration of what goes into the final environmental impact statement. The hearing that you're now holding, the hearing that you're considering extending or closing, is not about, and Bill has said this I think fairly clearly, is not about the collateral issues of having the public comment on Stantec's report or having the public comment on the McFarland-Johnson report. The hearing that you're holding is the public's comment and the public's word on the developer's draft environmental impact statement, and that is what this hearing should focus on. So I'm just going to appeal to Chris's litigator side and talk to him attorney to attorney. It would be much like having a separate hearing on a witness's testimony because they testified to something on the stand, and now we're going to start a separate hearing on what they testified to on the stand, collateral from the main issue that is being decided. The main issue that this board needs to decide is the DEIS, and that's what you're listening to testimony on. You are not supposed to be holding a hearing on the adequacy or completeness or comments made by McFarland-Johnson, Stantec, or anyone else.
My belief or my hope is that the McFarland report will help me focus my comments, my written comments, on this report. Right now, my written comments are due by July 25th. My thought also is that the public may also give me some insights that I wish to consider. Now, Bob, you're going to lose me if you suggest that I was wrong in accepting this as reasonably adequate for the purpose of discussion. I disagree with you on that. But I don't mean you're going to lose me, but you know, I don't agree with you on that. But my hope is that with allowing the public additional 2 weeks, that would give them the opportunity as well, if they can give me some greater and some additional insights to help me focus my comments on the DEIS, then I'd like to have that additional 2 weeks.
I call the question.
I'm sorry, what, Luis?
Call the question. Can we vote?
Well, if
Can call the question. I'm ready.
there has to be, I mean, that's a motion, and it would have to be voted on by the board. But if the board is, does anybody here on the board have any further comment? Danny,
I really would not recommend opening up
Is
this
the public hearing, is the public
discussion
hearing still
on
open?
No. I would, what is being discussed, this is why I made the comment before, Supervisor.
The public
is because
hearing,
The
we
public
have a-
hearing has not been closed, but we have a motion that is being discussed by the town board. And that motion needs to be discussed by the town board and then voted on by the town board. Louise is right. If there's more discussion by the town board, have it. If you're ready to vote, vote. But I do not recommend that you open up the debate on your motion to the floor of the assembly.
and we did give counsel for both sides liberty to engage in that. So, Mr. Daniele, I'm going to have to respect counsel's recommendation there.
If
But
after you vote no, let's.
Danny,
To clarify the motion that's on the floor is to hold the public hearing open for an additional 2 weeks, which means we come back here on the 27th of July.
I don't think Chris
And then the public comment.
specifically stated, implicit in your motion was to hold it open to our next town board meeting.
The specific motion was 2 weeks.
Well, he later said
No,
to.
I don't recall, but,
Okay, all right.
but that's the
Just
intent.
to be
Town clerk
clear,
and I
it would be,
recall.
but just to be clear, that would be to the town board meeting on July 13th. I'm sorry, July 27th.
Yes.
The 10-day period required normally by seeker runs through Saturday. What we have done, because we meet on Wednesdays, that's just the way the calendar works, what we did last time, and what I would suggest is that you clarify your motion again, that the comment period in that case would run through Monday, August 8th at 5 p.m. And if that is a friendly amendment that you're willing to consider to your motion.
Yes, that is.
Those dates work.
And the seconding party, Louise, you would concur.
Louise has called the question.
Well, no, calling the question involves, is itself a motion that would require a
Yes.
second?
Yes.
I'm simply going to ask whether members of the board have any further comment on this motion. Jerry,
At the risk of being gavelled, I'd like to make a suggestion that may resolve the issue here, which would be to extend the comment period for 2 weeks with a commitment.
That's not the motion that's on the table.
I understand, but the maker can
Mr.
amend his
Goldman, I've already
motion.
made the recommendation.
But the maker
to do that.
can amend his motion.
I've already made that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
We have a motion, and I will ask one more time. Do any board members have any further comment on the motion which would keep the public hearing on both components, the seeker component and the incentive zoning component, open through July 27th at 7 o'clock, as well as extend the written comment period through Monday, August 8th at 5 o'clock? Any further comment from members of the board on that matter?
Yes, if we voted no on this motion, that does not close
That's correct.
anything.
That's correct.
There has to be another motion made to
Understand
do
that.
that.
That's absolutely correct.
That's correct. I was going to make that clarification, so
Yep,
thank you.
thanks, Jim.
All right. I'm not a lawyer.
You got it right. You got it right anyway.
Further, Dan, please call the roll on the motion to hold both public hearings open.
Councilmember Vogel?
No.
Councilmember Novros?
Yes.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
No.
Councilmember Werner?
Yes.
Supervisor Manley?
No.
Mr. Amon? Result?
The motion fails.
Thank you.
Floor is open up for another motion then.
It is.
And I would I would encourage the board to consider holding open the written comment period.
I will just share with the board what Mr. Bergdorf said earlier, which is that his desire to have the public hearing continued was really to allow the public to comment further on the Stantec comments and the McFarland-Johnson comments. No, got it wrong.
Comment on the new material.
On the new-
To be produced by that.
Yeah, right. Well, that's right, correct. Not because he needed additional time to get the McFarland-Johnson report.
And that is the reason, and that is the only reason, because public input is very, very important. That's why we had the lengthy scoping hearing. But this is not a public hearing on McFarland-Johnson or on Stantec's report, or quite frankly, on all of the great comments that we have heard pro and con from members of the public throughout this process. And for that reason, I chose to vote no, that the rationale for extending the public hearing was not there.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on the draft environmental impact statement this evening, and we extend the period for written comments by 1 week until August 1st, 2016.
And I'll second that, the clarification that we are not closing the incentive zoning hearing.
Absolutely.
And that would be an extension of time to August 1st, 2016 at 5 p.m.?
5 p.m., yes.
In my concern, discussion?
Sure. We have a motion and a second. Motion by Jason, second by
My
Jim.
concern is selfish and personal. I'm going to be on the beach at, on August 1st, and that whole weekend before. So I'm going to be hard pressed to get, if I get the report in on the 25th, hard pressed to digest this now in that context in 2 days before leaving again on vacation. This is a real problem. If we can put it off another week beyond that, I'll be able to read it on the beach.
Chris. In a day of modern technology, we've all got to do what we've got to do.
I understand. It will mean I won't be able to give it the time I would like to, if I'm not going to get it till the 25th.
Any chance of getting it sooner?
They had told me we'll have this by the end of the month. They had never thought the public hearing would be closed. I'm pushing them to the 25th. I'm going to push them to get it as fast as I can get it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you've already done that. We have a motion, and we have a second. Do we have any further comment, discussion from the board on that motion? I'm going to wait for just a moment. Council is conferring with the town's environmental liaison.
Well, leaving the incentive zoning open, that would still allow for us to obviously take in these reports and look at it as it would impact an incentive zoning decision.
Well, they will certainly be in and part of our record.
Yeah.
When we return, assuming that we return to the consideration of the underlying incentive zoning application, which, as council indicated, and that's why I said assuming that we do, because there is no guarantee depending on how the environmental review process were to conclude. Ken, do you have any comment on?
We were just chatting about how the timing of when the FEIS would be due relative to the public comment period. And it's a 45-day period following the close of the hearing record. And I was debating with Mr. Boehner as to whether that meant the close of the public comment period or the close of the hearing.
Oh, I think I'm trusting that it's the close of the written comment period.
It would make sense that that is the case, and we sort of came to that conclusion, but we're...
Well, there's nothing in the law we can extend the written comment period as long as we want.
We can also extend the time period for the preparation of the FEIS.
Okay, all right. Because what I was going to say is it would be nonsensical if we extended the written comment period by 46 days. Right. Then you would have to have an FEIS. That's clearly not
sort of where I was going.
Would it help to amend the motion to state that with the period of time to file the FEIS be
No.
We don't need that at this time.
It's premature.
Yes. So I was conferring and I missed out. What was the motion?
Right now, the
ended?
motion is to close the seeker hearing and hold open the time for public comment through 5:00 p.m. Monday, August 1st.
August 1st. Okay, I just didn't know if you had changed. Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
No.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Thank you, Chris.
I might just make a comment. This is a good example of open, transparent government. Nobody's rushing to a judgment on this. This is important for the citizens as well as the developer in this case. So this is not a closed matter. This is just the first step.
Thanks, Jim. Ken?
I just would like to know when the board is continuing to is planning to continue the incentive zoning hearing to.
Given the fact that that hearing, we have not specified a date in the motion, and we are not specifically specifying that that date would be the next town board meeting or any other time. My own feeling is that it's premature to say when, if ever, that public hearing would continue. Again, I don't want to go through all those different hypothetical chains, but I think it's premature to state when it would resume.
I want to make sure that the town provides adequate notice to the community.
We will have to do that.
Relative to when that adjourned incentive zoning hearing will be held.
Absolutely. And because we are not setting a date now, we would have to go through a notice process. By the way, we have to go through a notice process, and I know Ramsey is our town environmental liaison is here, and I know Ramsey knows this, but now because we have extended the written comment period, we again have to give notice pursuant to seeker of the fact that we have extended the written comment period.
I might suggest, if I may, that the town board consider stating a date now, which could be then adjourned at a later time to, for example, September 13th, which would be about a month and a half after the close of the public comment period. And if there's an inadequate amount of time, then the town board could further extend or adjourn or continue that public hearing on incentive zoning. I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of saying that it's going to be continued without a date in mind stated today.
Well, the 13th, is the 13th the second Wednesday in September?
The 13th is the, I'm sorry, the 14th of September.
And I'm not sure that that would be after the 45-day FEIS period. I think that would be too soon.
Next town board meeting after that would be the 28th of September.
And I don't know whether we have, because I don't have our town board meeting calendar in front of me, I don't know whether we have adjusted any of those meetings for the Jewish holidays.
I have it. I have the actual calendar. It's the 14th and the 28th.
Jewish holidays start on October 2nd.
They do.
Thank you, Jerry.
They do this year.
Something hit me, and I'm not sure what you meant when you said if ever.
Well, Ken raised that point. It is possible that we would have essentially a negative finding statement, and the board could say this project is not going to the environmental mitigation cannot be accomplished.
You might not need a further hearing on incentive zoning if you decide to reject the project upon the adoption of your finding statement under seeker. Right? Right. So that's what I think that's all he meant.
I'm not suggesting that will or will not happen, but I think it's important to note that that's.
My recommendation is to state a date for the continuation of that incentive zoning public hearing to either the 14th or the 28th.
But is it really appropriate to contemplate a date for the incentive public hearing before not the FEIS, because the FEIS is the 45 days, but the finding statement
I understand.
Would be later than that.
Right, I understand that. The finding statement would not be able to be adopted until at least 10 days after you adopt the FEIS. My point is to just have a date out there against which you can work towards and use it as a placeholder for now. Otherwise, you're saying to the community, we're adjourning the public hearing on the incentive zoning to a date to be named later, and that seems a little bit too.
And I'll just throw back the other question, again, because it is possible that the environmental review will not lead to further. Are we not creating an expectation? Might not someone look at that and say, aha, they've already decided they can mitigate their environmental issues because they've set up further public hearing date on the, on the on the matter even before an FEIS or a finding statement has been considered. I just throw that out as that's sort of the way I look at it. You're right, and it's important that we have in our minds that if this project, that we have not closed the book on the incentive zoning piece of this, and that we will have to take action, and we will have to proceed with setting a public hearing date for the continuation.
Do we run afoul of the town code or of the seeker law if we don't set a future public hearing date on the incentive zoning piece?
No. Unless Mr. Boehner has a different opinion on that, I would say no. Yeah.
The question comes back to
Ramsey,
the
if you
notice.
would
Ramsey,
introduce yourself.
Town planner. The issue comes back to what type of notification we would need to do. We would have to renotice.
Yep.
When the date is determined.
I've had my say.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. No, I do. It's good discussion. Okay. Accordingly, we have concluded the public hearing. The written comment period will extend through August 1st. Thank you, everybody that was here tonight that participated, and thank you, everybody who participated in our previous public hearing and our scoping public hearing. We look forward to the process continuing.
Can we have 5 minutes?
We will take a 5-minute break and continue the meeting promptly at 10 minutes to 10. Board colleagues, can we resume the meeting here?
I'll go in search of.
All right.
No, promise not to take any more vacation. This is the only 2 weeks I've taken the entire freaking year. You did. Because I'm trying to get it.
Okay, everybody's back. I'm hoping that our camera people, and thank you to them, I'll thank them early tonight. I should have thanked them early the last time. Thank you to our TV staff for doing what you have to do, the technical work downstairs to keep us on the air, and we appreciate it. Let's continue on now with the rest of our agenda. Can I have we have no more public hearings. Can I have a motion to receive and file, and last council is, a motion to receive and file communications?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We do couple things. The Attorney General's report on solar power is very helpful, and we received a whole packet of information along with his communication. The next correspondence, Gula von Pearlstein. Those of you that have been around for a long time remember Cafe International, the von Pearlstein's restaurant at the corner of Monroe and Clover. Gula has been at the JCC for 19 years. She officially retired, but nobody had any illusions that, Gula doesn't retire. She said she'll continue to come by the JCC, but we had a nice note from her thanking me for a proclamation that I gave recognizing all of her work. We did get a letter relating to maybe a follow-up on some of our discussion about parking in the Corbett's Glen area, a letter relating with some other ideas about adding to parking in the area. And finally, correspondence from Becky Cotter, our rec director, indicating that Melissa Sumner is going to be retiring after 13 years with us as of August 27th. And those of you that work with Melissa know that she really keeps things running over there, the whole registration work and everything else. She's top shelf all the way, so we will miss her. Those are the correspondence. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilman Vogel?
Aye.
Councilman Person Novros? You were gone. I got out of the flow.
Get out of here.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Committee reports. Community Services Committee. Chris.
I believe Ms. Novros reported at our last meeting on our efforts of community services. Our next community service meeting will not be the next Wednesday, the 20th. We've moved it to accommodate the capital improvement project discussion. on the 20th at the FASC meeting. We will have our meeting on the 25th, Monday the 25th, at 9:30 a.m. at the Rec Department.
Thanks, Chris. Finance and Administrative Services,
Yes,
Jason?
the Finance and Administrative Services Committee met on July 6th last week, and each of the items that were discussed appears on tonight's agenda to be voted on. Our next meeting of the Finance and Administrative Services Committee will be on Wednesday, July 20th at 8:30 in the morning. We're going to be meeting in the downstairs meeting room, which is different from the stage where we usually meet. And as Councilman Werner mentioned, part of that meeting will be to discuss the capital improvement plan, which we do every year as part of our budget process in order to plan capital expenditures and equipment needs and things like that for the next 3 years. So it'll be an extended meeting, I anticipate. The public is invited and encouraged to attend.
The Budget Review Task Force has held several meetings itself related to the CIP. Most of the members have submitted their own rankings in terms of priorities. The CIP process begins with department heads themselves submitting their ranked priorities, but the Budget Review Task Force is an outside community-based opportunity for further review, and Suzanne either did at the end of the day or is going to tomorrow share that information with all of you. And great. Good. Thanks. So that'll give everybody an opportunity to review that before our FASC meeting. Louise, Public Safety.
Public Safety met on July 12th, this last Tuesday. On our networking, the Brighton Fire Department said they had 236 calls for the month and everything was going well. Brighton Public Works, Lockdeville Boulevard between Westfall and Senator Keating Boulevards have been milled. Now, they are now working on Highland from Hemingway to Clinton, as well as putting in sidewalks and curbing. Brighton Police reported that the 4th of July went well. There were no complaints. They were able to empty the parking lot at Meridian in 40 minutes with no incidents or accidents. There will be an open house at the police department on August 9th from 5 to 8 p.m. And you said that was...
Captain Klein is...
Tuesday, August 2nd.
Yeah.
From 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Well, how did I get this? Anyway, this is in lieu of or in addition to National Night Out?
Well, it's the same night as National
okay.
Night Out.
Okay. Officer Julie Knowitz will be retiring on August 19th. A third animal control officer has been approved and hired, which will enable the town to have Saturday coverage. The Brighton Police Department received positive public feedback for their supportive role during last Friday's demonstration in the city. Under old business, special events, August 13th at 9 a.m. will be the Fun Fit 5K race to be held at Meridian Park. And for further information, please contact the Recreation Department. Brighton's homecoming will be on September 16th from 4 to 7 p.m. at 12 Corners. The parade will begin at 6 p.m. Stop signs, a public hearing will be set tonight for stop signs at the intersections of Hillside Avenue with all of the streets that go into it. New business, Fire Marshal Chris Roth is working with the City of Rochester to make sure food trucks are carrying the proper weight of propane in their trucks for the safety of the trucks and the crowds around them. The next public safety meeting will be held on August 9th at 8 in the morning in the downstairs meeting room.
Thanks, Louise. And actually, the appointment of Shanna Higgins on the animal control is also being done tonight. Okay. And just a little bit more clarification, because I think it was important relating to the police department and the mutual aid in the city the other night.
Well, I heard him at the beginning of this meeting.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to just make clear is that two of our officers, as part of established mutual aid procedures, were working in the city. They were not, however, in the immediate downtown area where the demonstrations were taking place.
Correct.
They were covering.
They were pretty much backing up city officers.
Correct.
The city officers were primary responders because they were so shorthanded because of what was going on. they asked for some assistance just so none of their officers were responding alone on certain calls. So we were more of a backup situation. They might have handled a couple of calls on their own, but routine type stuff that there was no enforcement engagement by our people at all.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Louise. Public Works, Jim.
Public Works met Tuesday, July 5th, 9 a.m., and at that time, we covered a number of matters under old business. One of those is code enforcement. The committee discussed that the town has undertaken and completed a demolition of 36 Landing Park pursuant to the town code. We also scheduled the demolition of 33 Remington Parkway for July 18th, which is coming up.
Next Monday.
Pursuant to the town code. And they also discussed the hiring of David Patterson as building inspector aide, his code enforcement duties. And next item was code amendments. The committee discussed the following proposed code amendments, which I think we're going to have in the resolution to refer to the planning board later tonight. The amendments were as follows. One has to do with amusement devices, proposed to provide more reasonable accommodation for the installation and use of amusement devices. The next one was the amendment to Chapter 129, property maintenance, and proposing to regulate defacing properties with graffiti. And then an amendment to Chapter 205, bulk and parking regulations. And Chapter 207, supplementary regulations, proposed to provide relief from impervious coverage or percentage limits of the comprehensive development regulations for pavement required in the town. And also an amendment to Chapter 207, supplementary regulation providing reasonable accommodation for the code installation of residential handicap access ramps. And then the other item the committee discussed was the need to conduct more research and started drafting a code amendment in response to the e-cigarette and vapor sales moratorium in our town. More to follow on that. The next committee meeting will be on Tuesday, August 2nd at 9 a.m. in the lower level community meeting room.
Thanks, Jim. And Ken and Ramsey and I have begun the process of discussing and preparing to draft the e-cigarette law, and that is something we're actively working on and moving along. It certainly continues to be my goal that we have that in place within the 6-month moratorium that we initially set.
Good.
Thanks for all of those committee reports. New business. Jason, reading and approval of the claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier today I reviewed claims totaling $407,036.34. Notable claims include a payment to the Robert Greene Truck Division in the amount of $26,968.21 for a new 2016 Dodge Charger police vehicle. A payment to Leo J. Roth in the amount of $29,351.44. Which represents the final payment for the roof replacement at the Ops Center. Payment to Genesee Tree Service in the amount of $4,500 for emerald ash borer treatment for trees along the Brickyard Trail. The claims appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second.
Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute a stormwater easement maintenance agreement with the owner of the properties located at 2122 and 2140 South Clinton Avenue. Move the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And this is the receipt of an easement, so no permissive referendum is required. The owners are giving the town an easement for stormwater purposes. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel? Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Louise? Can you?
The next matter is to set August.
No, I'm sorry, the Shana, and I forgot about your eye. My apologies.
Okay, it's okay, I could do it. The next
rehiring Shana Higgins.
next matter is to approve to hire Shana C.M. Hagens to fill current position openings of part-time animal control officer effective July 15, 2016, as per the resolution prepared by the attorney to the town. This has been approved by Mark Henderson.
Second.
And it was reviewed in finance. Shanna worked with us, did very well.
She was here, if I have this right, I believe it was November of 2014 to December of 2015. She only left us because she was pursuing other opportunities down south. That didn't pan out for her, so she came home to Rochester, and the first phone call she made was to us, saying, I would love to come back to work. I enjoyed my job with Brighton. And would
And
really
boy,
love
it
to
didn't
come
take
back."
long for Mark Henderson to come back to my office.
No,
and
he jumped
say,
right on that.
Oh,
Yeah, he ran in my
absolutely.
office as soon as he got the call and said, guess who's on the phone?
Absolutely.
So this is going to be a good thing.
Very
because
pleased to have her
This is
back.
going to bring us back up to where we should be with staffing, and I think it'll be great for the residents as far
And
as.
she did a wonderful job in
Yes, she
just,
did.
you know, a year.
This
She
is going to be a
really-
seamless process. She knows the job, and
Yeah.
she's going to hit the ground running on Friday, and this is going to be a good thing. So.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
I guess I just would-
Jason seconded it.
You know, I was going to say, just to point out that this is going to provide coverage that we don't currently have.
Correct.
Yes,
gonna
that's
enhance
correct. In
Coverage,
fact,
weekend coverage.
I did the schedule, so we're going to have 7 days a week, and on the weekends, we'll have a full 8-hour day as well as a 7-hour day on Sunday from mid-morning to late afternoon, and it's going to coincide with Pittsford Animal Hospital hours on Monroe Avenue as well, because that helps us with some of these dog release issues that we come up against on weekends that unfortunately the police officers have had to get involved in, and sometimes it doesn't go real well because they don't know the laws, the inside and outs of licensed versus unlicensed dogs and all the other stuff that needs to be done. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, and it's fantastic also because it allows, Shanna will have the ability to release dogs over the weekend. So if a dog gets picked up Friday night, you know, they have a 2-night stay at a doggy hotel that the owners often wish that didn't happen. So this really helps reunite families that much faster.
Sometimes our officers get involved and they really aren't that conduit for releasing the dogs. So.
Oh, it's a great thing. And it is. It's coverage we have not had before.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to consider setting a public hearing for a proposed stop sign installation on Hillside Avenue. Moving the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town. That will be set for August 10th, 2016.
Second.
And just a clarification on that, these are actually stop signs that are going to go at the end of Edgemore, Claiborne, Monteroy, Wilshire, and Pomeroy at the intersection.
Palmerston.
Palmerston. Oh,
No, it's been corrected.
It says Palmerston here.
I'll be darned. Where'd I get Pomeroy?
I don't know, but I just corrected.
Okay.
All right.
It's
have the
correct
old-
in
I have the old
It's
version.
correct in the text of the law.
Good.
I
Good
was
to
going
hear.
to say, I said, boy, there's no
Pomeroy.
Pomeroy in Brighton.
Now, Tim, I've always noticed that because I usually blow through those intersections, but that actually you're supposed to stop
You
at
always
any
drive
T
carefully.
intersection. Now, does the adding of a stop sign, other than enforcing it for folks like myself, require us to drop salt at those intersections? Is that something I understood you to say?
We do already.
We do already anyway.
We pretty much do the intersections regardless. The stop signs certainly make it, I guess, more clarity to the average citizen or motorist. But, yeah, those intersections we're already salting.
Salt. But ordinarily, is that a requirement? Wherever there's a stop sign, we have to salt? I believe you've always done
It's
that.
just our practice.
Our practice is to do intersections, curves, both vertical and horizontal curves. The stop signs, obviously for those intersections, accentuate. Same thing if you came up to a traffic signal as well. Those intersections always tend to get, well taken care of because we know that, obviously braking is imperative, to control the car.
So we're already doing it.
Yeah.
Good. Interesting. I think it's a good addition. I think it's very
So
appropriate.
Jim has made that motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Louise? Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to authorize transfer of funds for $2,100 to support the costs relating to the resurfacing of the Meridian Center Park tennis courts. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town before us.
Second.
This simply reflects the actual cost of doing that resurfacing. The low bid was a little bit more than what we had estimated, so there's just this additional transfer needed.
And we've been putting this off for several years, and it's time.
It is time. I've seen other facilities of other institutions, and I've seen what happens when they're allowed to go.
Go too far.
And tennis courts get good use, and of course, some of our courts also get used for pickleball use, so it's important to keep them. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is authorize the supervisor to execute a one proposed sanitary sewer easement together with related documents for the Jewish Community Center Fitness and Aquatic Building Addition project. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Jim, why don't you?
Yeah, next item is to set August 10th, 2016 as a public hearing date to consider proposed Newcrest Storm Drainage District. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And this is part of our continuing effort in that neighborhood. Tim, anything you want to add about the Newcrest?
Bill, only as you said, from the standpoint, this is the next step from all the informational meetings that was had and design that came up, and I think the neighbors were pretty excited that we were able to offer them some type of solution after all the discussions that we had. So I think it's all good.
And thanks again, the Newcrest neighbors and the other neighbors in that district that really took the time to present their issue. They did it well. You all were as creative as you could be working around some obstacles to put plans together, and we're implementing them street by street as neighborhoods have sufficient petition support for the funding.
And as you know, Supervisor, sometimes to go in and correct things after the fact are a little bit more fun and challenging than doing it right in the first place.
But back 60 or so years ago, when these houses were built, they just didn't do drainage the same. The above ground swale type drainage system is not something that for new construction today would happen. So good for
correct.
Bringing them up to.
And all credit to not only the residents, but staff and working together collaboratively to get this in place.
And this was Dagmar that
Yes.
is in that area. She worked very hard for
Yes,
this,
she
so
did.
nice job.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dan, unless there's any further discussion, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to set August 10th as a public hearing date to consider the proposed Dale Road East Refuse District. I move that we adopt a resolution prepared by the attorney for the town before us.
Second.
And again, as we've said many times, creating these refuse districts saves our residents money. We're going to have a second one here as well, both in East Brighton. And the opportunity, the savings is, for each homeowner, maybe $150 a year, but for a lot of homes, it adds up major savings for our residents.
Yeah, I think it saves about a third of your refuse bill when we can negotiate as a group, and also you get a lot fewer refuse trucks on the street. It's safer, quieter, greener, all those things.
Yep. Motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Aye. Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye, and Chris, do another one.
Next item is to set, again, August 10th, 2016, and I'll be in town for all of these. as a public hearing date to consider the proposed Colonial Village Road Refuse District. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town before us.
Second.
All the good things we said about the last one, true here again. Comments, anybody?
Bill, the one thing that drives me crazy, though, is that people say, all I know, though, is my taxes went up when they see this refuse charge on the tax. I hope people understand that what you're seeing on your tax bill for these special districts are for services to your neighborhood. It doesn't drive your taxes up, but yes, it appears on your tax bill.
But it it reduces your overall expenses.
Absolutely reduces your overall expense and all those other good reasons. And it also impacts us on the tax cap.
It does impact us on the tax
hateful.
cap, which is a flaw in the tax cap structure, and I've brought it to the attention through the Association of Towns, and although there may be some efforts at fixing some of the bigger challenges with the tax cap, I have no reason for optimism that this kind of a small change
fighting the good fight
is going to happen. But it's important, and we keep doing it, understanding that it does make tax cap compliance more challenging, and this year is going to be very, very difficult with the low inflation rate. There is no such thing as a 2% tax cap. I say that, and people scratch their heads and say, what do you mean? The governor says there's a 2% tax cap, but there isn't. There is a tax cap that last year was about 0.7%, and in a world where healthcare costs go up 10%, where energy costs often go up, where pension costs often go up and are at very high levels, and where the cost of the important ongoing maintenance to our infrastructure continues to go up, and we don't have the same exclusion for capital expenditures that school districts have, it makes it very, very hard to stay under the tax cap. And I have to be very honest with everybody. I don't want to commit that we will be able to do that this year. As always, with the Budget Review Task Force, we will be aggressively working with our department heads, who also are very diligent about finding ways to save money. But I don't want to give any illusions that we have a magic wand that we can that we can wave and stay under the tax cap in the face of significant external expense increases.
I'm confident perhaps that the Finance Chairman DePonzio will continue the efforts of the previous chairman of the Finance Committee.
The efforts I know will be there. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye, and well, let's go to the next item. Jason.
Yes, next item seeks approval to adopt revised wage rate schedule for all seasonal employees to reflect increase in state minimum wage requirements effective December 31st, 2016. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
This is something I supported. This is the first step of the move towards a higher minimum wage. Here in upstate New York, there's been a lot of talk about a $15 minimum wage. Right now, in upstate New York, there is no immediate schedule to take us to $15 an hour, but there is a schedule downstate to get to $15. There's a reflection, an understanding that costs of living are different here, and the impact on employers here are different. But we will be raising our wages, and not just for minimum wage. Frankly, it does ripple through other members of our workforce, and this again is one of the external factors that will, by necessity, that we have no choice in, increase our expense structure this year that will make it more difficult to stay under the tax cap. Very difficult.
You see the current minimum wage, $9 is going to go up to $9.70. At the end of December, that's about an 8% increase.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Noveros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks approval to amend the table of organization for the Building and Planning Department, along with the salary and wage schedule for flat salaried employees, to include the title of Building Inspector Aide position, in addition to authorizing transfer of funding within the 2016 budget to support same. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
I see on the agenda, the word aid is spelled without an E. Is it correctly spelled in the
Resolution.
resolution?
I don't see an E.
Okay. Let's just clarify that it is an AIDE.
Yeah,
aid.
I copied the document that I was given,
Not a
so
word.
it just does not have an E on it, but I'm told that the title does have an E on it. So we should
Jason, if
have
you'll
an
accept
amendment
that,
to add an E.
Do we have a second that will also accept
I
that
gave the
change?
second.
Thank you, Chris. Motion and a second. This is the position that was
And that
referenced
changes,
earlier.
that change is not just a Band-Aid, by the way.
But this will continue to help us address our property maintenance issues, as well as our building inspection issues. David Patterson is taking that position. David has fire experience and will bring a lot of different areas of expertise to the job, part-time position.
But this will help us, focus on these neighborhood issues.
Yes, it will.
And this is the $12,300 we added to the budget last year for this very purpose, in response to this concern about vacant properties and just general neighborhood maintenance issues.
Yep. Further comments? We have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel? Aye. Councilmember Noveros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to receive and file the proposed amendments to the particular chapters within the town code and refer them to the planning board for review and recommendations. That's what we moved or discussed earlier. I move on the resolution is prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Yep, we did. We got a full review in the previous report. Further discussion on those? They'll be coming back after the planning board looks at them, and we'll be asking you to set a public hearing on all of them. Motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Noveros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor. First item is the expense and revenue report. Suzanne?
Yeah. Do have a quarterly report today. If you'd like me to go through it? I know it's getting kind of late.
Absolutely. Well, let's have a motion and a second. First, to receive and file it, and then Suzanne will discuss it.
I move that we receive and file the expense report as of June 30, 2016.
Second.
Now, Suzanne, take it away.
Okay. As discussed in the past, when we did the first quarter report, the 2016 town operating budget, which consists of our general fund, highway fund, library, and debt service funds, provides $24,217,395 in net appropriations, and that is funded by the tax levy of $14,546,550. $1,242,795 in appropriated fund balance and reserves, and $8,428,050 in other remaining revenue sources. So that was our adopted budget. As we go through the year, we do make some amendments here and there. With regards to the revenues, 50% of our revenue sources consist of sales tax, and aside from the tax levy, but 50% of the remaining revenues consist of the sales tax and mortgage tax. For 2016, we estimate $3,233,620 for sales tax and $835,000 for mortgage tax. Our first quarterly check for sales tax came in May. We received $788,526, or just over 24% of our budget projection. Typically, our last 2 quarters of the year are a little higher than the first 2 quarters, so I'm assuming we're going to make projection for 2016. Our first semi-annual mortgage tax payment was received in June. We received $426,165. That was for the period of October of 2015 through March of 2016, and was about 12.5% higher than the same period a year ago. And that $426,000 represents 51% of our budget estimate for this calendar year. And our second payment is usually higher again, so again, I'm anticipating meeting our revenue estimate for sales tax, or mortgage tax.
And boy, with interest rates going the way they are, those refinances are heating back up again. Whoever thought that some of those mortgages would be able to be refinanced, but they are.
The remaining $4.6 million of our revenue budget, including year-to-date amendments, is mainly made up of departmental incomes, governmental charges, state aid, pilots, and property tax interest, and very little interest income.
Very little.
Yeah. For the first half of the year, we recorded $2.6 million, or just over 57% of that estimate. So we're trending well there too. With regards to the expenditures, of the $24.2 million, $18,275,000, or 75% of it, consists of wages and benefits for our active and retired workforce. Our full-time and part-time wages are right on target because we only fund positions of which we budgeted for. For overtime, though, that can fluctuate throughout the year, and after the first half of the year, we've spent 56% of our overtime budget, or $214,000. And as I've said before, it all depends what we get at the end of the year with regards to snowfall, usually is where that is mostly fluctuates.
Although police is certainly another area where
Police
overtime
too,
and
correct.
we have incurred
And
some
really, those are
overtime.
only two areas that we have budgeted overtime. We have very, very little anywhere else. The 2016 budget for employee benefits is $6.2 million, of which we've expensed about $2.9 million of that so far through half the year, which is 47% of the budget. So we're on track there. And we have $2.1 million also in benefits for the New York State retirement system. We've only received our invoices for January through March so far of this year. We'll get the balance at the end of this year, and we've expensed 25% of our budget, so we're right on target with that expenditure. And of the balance of $6.4 million in appropriations, we've expensed or encumbered 72% of our $3.7 million budget for supplies and contractual expenses. Even though there's more than 50%, we encumber the majority of our anticipated expenditures at the beginning of the year. So that's typical for this time of year, to be at 72%. We've spent 73% of our budget for insurance, for our liability and risk management insurance, but we've also paid 3/4 of the year so far. So we're on track there. We've spent or encumbered $709,000 of our just over $1 million in capital expenditures that we budgeted. So that's 66% of those expenditures. Again, some of them are encumbrances that we already have out there. And we've expensed about 40% of our utilities budget, but we only had gas and electric bills through May, so that's right on target. And the remaining appropriations are for debt service. We have $863,325 in debt service this year, and we'll get billed exactly that amount. So after the first half of the year, we're right on target really with our expenses and our revenues coming in like very close on both of them. That just shows that our budgeting practices are very tight, but well planned out.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate the detail. I would note, we do have a motion here. I would note that what you have in your packet is an excerpted version, but it's the full report that will be formally received and filed into the
I did
as
email
part
those
of the
out.
record. Yeah. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions for Suzanne on any of that? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Noveros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Just a couple of other things I want to mention. Probably the most important I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and as did Captain Klein, relating to our police and the shootings in the other communities. But I did want to talk about a couple of other things. A much more enjoyable topic. For those of you Food Channel fans, you're probably familiar with the Iron Chef show. Well, the Iron Chef, or something very close to the Iron Chef, came to the landings at Brighton today. I was asked by the landing if I would participate in a cook-off with their chef, Chef Dan Fernandez, and I said, sure. I don't know what got into me. I think Mary Ann said sure. She told them I was a great cook. Well, today was the day of reckoning, and Chef Dan and I made appetizers for the residents of the landing at Brighton at their dinner tonight. And there was only one stipulation. It didn't have all the exotic. I really was getting nervous. I said, you're going to tell me I got to, do something crazy. No, the only condition was we had to make something with watermelon, being that it's summertime. So Chef Dan made a wonderful carnitas meat dish with watermelon and a watermelon salad. I made kung pao shrimp with watermelon as sort of a cooling touch to the spice of kung pao shrimp. And the residents voted.
Uh-oh.
And I'd love to tell you, I'd really love to tell you that I beat Chef Dan. And despite a little bit of trash talking and maybe some electioneering and stuffing the ballot box, I came close. But I did not beat Chef Dan. His dishes were very, very good. But we really had a lot of fun. A lot of people actually did like my kung pao shrimp with watermelon. But what it really was was another opportunity to really let the folks living, in this case at the landing, but in all of our senior communities, that they are an important part of our community. They are an important part of Brighton. And all I know is that whenever I visit, whether it's St. John's Meadows or Brickstone or the landing, I don't have to work very hard to make them feel engaged. They are engaged. They follow what we do. They, in some cases, watch our meetings. But so it was a great night tonight. That's a logical connection to the Brickyard Trail that runs right by the landing. Some of the residents of the landing have been using the Brickyard Trail. It seems like almost everybody in town has been using the Brickyard Trail. Tremendous activity on the trail. I couldn't be happier. Kudos again. We have now, since our last meeting, formally opened the trail, the Brickyard Trail in the Sandra L. Frankel Nature Park. And people are just coming up to me wherever I go, and particularly on the trail itself, saying what a great, great improvement this is for the town. For those of you that are familiar with New York City, someone described it to me as the High Line of Brighton, and it's probably a pretty apt description. But it's just wonderful to see so many people out, and we are going to have an opportunity for the residents there at the landing who sometimes have mobility issues to get them out on the trail as a group. They couldn't come to the grand opening, but we do want to get them out there. I did reassure one of the residents there today, we generally don't allow motorized vehicles on the trail, but we certainly will allow motorized wheelchairs that people need for mobility, whether they're residents of landing or anybody else that uses a motorized wheelchair. The trail is ADA accessible, and is just a great place for everybody to have a chance to visit. I do, we talk about, things have been fairly quiet on this front, but I do want to remind everybody again, please, when you go to our parks, wherever you park, if you park at home in your driveway, please lock your car. Please do not leave valuables. Not only don't leave them in view, don't leave them in the passenger compartment at all, please. As we periodically do, particularly in the summer, we'll get incidents where on a street, in a neighborhood, multiple cars will be hit invariably, truly invariably, not 50%, not 70%, 98% of the time. The cars are unlocked or have valuables, purses, electronic devices visible in the passenger department. If your car is parked in your driveway, don't leave the key in it. Just because it's in your driveway, it is not safe. We have had a couple of car thefts this year because people left cars in their driveway with the key open, with the keys in them. Just
One case, we had a garage that was open with the cars in the garage with the keys in the ignition.
yeah.
Oh, great.
So, common sense will protect a lot of that. As always, our department stands ready to meet with neighborhood groups, and we do that regularly, and I know Judy shares that with the neighborhood associations that are part of BNU, and thank you for that. And also, as sort of a summertime, warning, please remember, we're getting into, we're in mosquito season, and we're in tick season as well. Please protect yourselves when you're outdoors. Wear long pants, wear long shirts if you're going to get into, if you're going off the trail, even in your backyard. Obviously, we all have mosquitoes in our backyard, but ticks, can be in your backyard too. So think very seriously about spraying, but also wearing long sleeves. I know it's hot, but it is a concern. So that's all I have. Matters of the town clerk.
I have nothing this evening.
Matters of the town board.
Stay cool.
Matters of the attorney to the town. I skipped you. Can I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment of particular people in collective bargaining?
So moved.
Second?
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? You don't have a nameplate either. Who are you?
That is Councilmember Novros.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. I don't anticipate we'll be coming back out into open session. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and for watching us on TV, and again, for everybody that was here earlier for the public hearing. Thank you all. We'll see you at our next meeting on July 27th. Have a great evening. Stay cool, everybody.